All right, good evening. This is the June 30th meeting of the Charter Committee. Tonight we're going to continue our review of the Executive Authority and go through our minutes and some other administrative things there. And our first agenda item within the continuing review of Executive Authority is we have Nick Lawler here, as well as Michelle, I'm going to forget.
Vibert.
Thank you, Vibert. Here to talk about light and water and how they fit into things and how they are different, and also how the HR, how that crosses the town boundaries and so on. So I don't know if there's any questions here you want to say, or just have you start and talk to us a little bit about what's going on. I know you know what we're doing and you have some thoughts on that, so just. You, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
So light and water departments were both established separately, but through legislation. Mass General Law dictates how light plants are to run. It's Mass General Law 164. It basically sets up, and it's very specific, that the light plant is really a commercial entity, independent from the town, run through local control. In this situation, we have an elected board of commissioners. And they hire and fire a manager, who is me, and I also report to that elected board. And then we have about 45 staff members that work under me, doing water, sewer, electric, utilities. Water was not set, doesn't cover in Mass General Law 164. They were actually established through a special act in 1911 that almost mimics some of that same language. It puts the water department underneath the elected board of water commissioners, and puts on that authority with that water.
But that's Littleton specific. This is not talk Mass General Law.
Correct.
Now this
Yeah,
is Littleton
water
specific.
departments throughout the Commonwealth are mostly set up through special legislation, and they're all a little bit different. But the one that we operate under was done in 1911. And I think Joe knows the original.
You were there in
water system
1911, is that what you're saying?
I did a little research into the two families. Conant and Houghton. Littleton took over a water system they had already started.
Oh, wow.
Joe's
Those names we know, huh?
I was part of that, yeah.
But yeah, so the town in 1911 set up legislation. I'm guessing probably right around 1912, right around the same time as when they got off the ground. 'Cause it takes time to obviously, once you pass legislation, to hit the ground running. And it's probably how they ended up with Light and Water Commission. It is actually two separately elected boards. When they run, they pull papers for both and run for both. I don't know if any time in history that they've lost one seat and won the other. We've always treated it as one board. We have one meeting. We talk.
I'm just going to ask you, separate meetings, or it's just one meeting for both?
And we talk about, each one talks about it independently, but it's all done in one meeting. And now we even add the sewer department topics in there as well. As far as HR, Michelle was instrumental in a lot of the onboarding stuff. So when we hire employees, she coordinates the benefits, a lot of paperwork back to the retirement board. We pay, that's covered for by our ratepayers. A big difference between electric, water, and sewer and the town is we're funded by ratepayers. That's a whole separate revenue stream. There's actually 3 revenue streams on our side. We have Mass General Law 164, which establishes the light fund, and then we had an enterprise fund set up for the water department. And when the select board set up the sewer department back, whatever it was, 7 years ago, they set up a separate enterprise fund for that as well, which was very smart of those officials at the time to do that, because that keeps all the money protected, and with those rates stay with those activities. But Michelle does do the onboarding, does a lot of coordination for early on and at the end of an employee's tenure with the retirement board and healthcare and that stuff.
So just to be clear, so then all the employees that work for you, they're employees of the town still. They're considered employees of the town, and they're covered by all the policies, not the policy, but they get the benefits and so on.
Right.
This is where it gets.
We have 2 unions. So we most of us covered our union contracts, and we do have non-union staff that fall under a policy book that was approved by the Board of Electric, Light, and Water Commissioners for non-union personnel. With the Light Department 164, it has to be that way. And with the way the Water Department is set up, that's the way it's always been. And I would strongly advocate to keep it that way.
So are there ever any conflicts with that? Like you have a policy and then there's policies in the town and there's HR? It's never, that's not an issue though?
No.
No, because it's like anything where if you have a union and your collective bargaining
Okay,
agreement, you
so
just
it's
follow that.
Union based, and so for the non-union people, it's still just, as if there's another contract there and they have their thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not a problem.
Yep.
But they still are under the same umbrella for health benefits and things like that?
Right.
And vacation and all those kind of things, the same? No, because again, we're back to union contracts, and so everybody does their own.
Yeah, it's really just the healthcare, dental,
Payroll.
short-term disability.
You do
Pension.
payroll?
Yeah, they process payroll. Payroll is approved by us, and then it's sent for processing to the town. And the light department pays for that. The light department pays the town $760,000 a year in lieu of taxes, and $200,000 of that is carved out for those type of services. It's reclassified by the town.
Michelle staff
For
and
accounting, for
payroll,
treasurer.
okay.
We do utilize town staff here and there to help support our functions, and we want to pay the town for that. That help.
Do you regard employees under your supervision as employees of the town or not employees of the town?
I mean, they're light and water department employees, LELWD. We have a very strong brand, but at the end, they're employees of the town, absolutely. But, that's where the check comes from. It says Town of Littleton on the check, so.
that kind of says it, right?
That's right, that's right.
We have, obviously, I know a lot of you guys have been in town for a long time, so I don't have to speak about the reputation of the light and water department. But nationally, regionally, statewide recognized. We were just down in New Orleans, received national recognition for community commitment on the electric side. We're the only mass utility ever to win that award, and we won it twice. We actually won it in 1992 and this past year. So this goes beyond any employee that is there now. The culture at Light and Water over the years has been tremendous and tremendously interwoven in the things that we do for the community that we serve. Not just Littleton, we serve Boxborough as well for electric, and now even a little bit now in water. We just signed a contract to take care of services in Devens for electric, which is financially beneficial to the Light and Water Department. Some of what we've done before in the past. We've had, I often talk about the consistency that we've had. We've had long-serving board members. Bruce Trumbull just moved off the board, but he was like 23 years on the board. And that's common. Tom Walker had a lot of years. Board members now have a lot of years on there. We've had 10 general managers in 113 years. I've dealt with 7 town administrators in my 10 years. So just to give you how steady and consistent Light and Water is.
Pencil their names in, right?
And then, again, it goes, for us, at least goes back to the 70s for Light and Water Department. I know firsthand a lot of that history that really built that place. Built from Kurt Lanciani and on.
Thanks, I'm sorry for being late. Babysitter issues. Apologies. Yeah, I was just wondering, in your opinion then, is there anything that you would want to see different in the way things are structured, in the way that the town and Light and Water interact? Are there any, if you had a comment box, was there anything that you would put in it that could potentially be addressed through a charter, or just more clarity or transparency? Like you mentioned, consistency. Are there any aspects of the success of Light and Water that you'd also like to see codified? Maybe some of these things tend to be a function of who happens to be in charge at the time, and we're also trying to identify if there are ways that we can kind of make sure that continues.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of our success has been grooming the manager from within. And that started with Savas. Savas was an employee. Savas Danos, we don't know him. He was an employee before he was general manager. Same about Scott Edwards, and same with me. And that goes back to 1971, 72. So having a manager that comes to the top and understands how this community works, because every community works a little bit differently. I think has been a tremendous benefit from us. And we have that now. You know, we're grooming Dave Ketchin, who's a tremendous leader, and I'm not going anywhere soon, but we have a plan in place to continue to foster that type of growth and make sure we have continued leadership. I would just tell you, keep it status quo. I mean, working for an elected board is incredible, because at the end of the day, I'm working for 4 or 5 people that work for the entire community. It's their community, it's our community. And we want to deliver on those messages, on what you guys want for a community. And there's no better way of doing that than through an elected board.
Is it only Littleton represented on the board?
Yeah, so Littleton, back in 1912, had the courage to start the light plant, and Boxborough is a franchise member. They get all the benefits that a Littleton resident gets. We don't treat them any differently. But if we were to take debt out, which we don't have any debt, we have the opposite situation, that debt would fall back on the town if we were to go bankrupt. So someone has to own that risk, and ultimately it falls back onto the town of Littleton.
So, help me with the independent. If it's funded by ratepayers, but if you were to
Yep.
do financing or debt financing, it would be the town's responsibility if you defaulted?
The only thing we have to go to town meeting for is to borrow money. So ultimately, the town of Littleton would make that vote for us to borrow money, and then they would take that responsibility off of the debt if we were to go bankrupt.
So pulling that thread a little bit, you said you're funded by ratepayers, but the checks say town of Littleton. So does the town of Littleton pay payroll, or does the, okay.
No. They just process it. Same with the vendor warrants, all checks that get cut through the town.
Okay.
So the town of Littleton's sort of a payroll processing service. Is that kind of?
But the W-2 is going to say,
Town of Littleton.
Town of Littleton.
But I'm thinking in terms of, I mean, that setup is common also for, I think, other corporate setups where you have another entity processes payroll and it comes from them, but the actual contract is,
Yep.
Service provider.
yes, service provider.
But you
Okay.
have a body of personnel practices and policies that are unique to you, correct?
Yeah, but I mean, I would say they're most likely in line with the towns.
But you have,
Yes, yep.
you have a separate set of personnel policies and practices.
Yep.
So, as part of this, lots of change in the town manager, State came in and did this review, and one of the things they recommended was that the water department should be separate from the light department. And I know they did that, that's probably a generic recommendation based on, how generally things are worked, and you kind of responded to that somewhat already, but.
I would say you have a tremendous board that understands how to run a utility, how to govern a utility. And I believe that's why the sewer department went from the select board to the commissioners, because of that level of experience and knowledge in that room. I would advocate keep it all together. They're already separate by having the separate enterprise funds. The funds are protected within that department. But even when the sewer, it's actually a sewer division, it's a division of the water department. When they set that up, they wanted to link the management to the water department.
I support that. I support what Nick is saying. I mean, you've got an extremely well-run operation all across the board. We could not replicate that without a sizable investment.
And again, there's a lot of infrastructure that you share now too, right? That would also be expensive, IT and things like that, you'd have to split up, correct?
Correct.
I have to ask.
Yeah.
This is, a lot of this stuff is, I don't think people expect, this is what people expected, I think, and so on, but you have to ask.
Yeah, there's a lot of
questions
stuff.
and get out.
The water department lives
Yeah.
in the light department building. Sure. So if the water department was to slide to the town, you'd have to house them somewhere.
Yeah, that's.
We have a whole
Wouldn't be
front
a reason
office
not to do it,
staff.
but yeah.
We didn't add any staff because of the water department. But we have utility professionals that know how to handle phone calls. They can handle them for the water, they can handle them for sewer, they can handle them for electric. Like I was telling you before we started, our water operators are getting licenses to be wastewater operators. These people are used to being in treatment plants, they're used to that type of operation. So I think pulling it apart, I'm not sure what problem you're solving by pulling it apart. I think you're just creating more bigger learning curve.
So, Tim, did you have something?
No, yeah, I did. Nick, Light and Water, I mean, obviously, you operate autonomously from the town. I guess my question is there any form of government or anything that we could recommend as a charter committee that would affect you in any way? That it's a problem for you, that's going to change anything? I mean, my opinion is no. I mean, you guys exist over here, and you do your thing, and you do a great job at it. There's nothing we're going to recommend that's going to change. I mean, I don't, even when we look at the issue of elected versus appointed, I don't think we can go near these boards because they were created under legislation, and, we're not even going to look at that. I mean, I know I'm putting you on the spot a bit, but I mean, is there anything that's going to affect?
Clarify, like, why?
Just don't ask me any Rivoli questions. We'll be happy.
But that's, I don't see that there is anything that's going to really change it.
What I would say is, we do interact with the town.
Yeah.
So any positive changes that you make that strengthen, Jim's role or help him do his job better, help the town function better, that helps us. But there's nothing directly that should impact us. But I would like to not work with a new town administrator every year or two.
Well, yeah, the town has, recent history is...
But the charter, though, in a lot of cases says all employees, all town employees, this and all that, and we have to say, with the exception of, and then it's you guys and probably the school departments and so on.
But they are town employees.
Right,
They
that's
are.
what we had to
They
say,
are.
with the exception of, so all town employees except like water
But they are
employees.
town employees.
I know, that's why I said we have to say
They're not
except
an
for.
exception.
But they're
But
like
we are
accepted.
accepting them, that's the whole point, some of
Because you
these
would
policies.
define them as town employees, but say, as a town employee, they are exempt from X, Y, Z. So they are exempt from, for instance, following the town personnel policy because they would be following the light and water policy, or exempt from.
Because they're
That makes
hired and
But they are
fired by Nick. I mean, nothing, even like a disciplinary issue is handled by you. It doesn't come to the town
Correct.
in any aspect.
Yeah, I don't think you want to blur those lines, because right now, I'm handling those issues, and I'm dealing with a board of commissioners.
Oh, yeah, no, I would agree with that. But
And then go to Jim and Michelle, and they gotta go to select board, it just gets more complicated.
yeah.
Could you explain again the two boards, the water and the electric?
Yeah, that might be where you can
Those are
help, make them pull paper for one. Again, this probably goes back to how they were formed over 100 years ago. When they pull nomination papers to run for office, they pull for both Water Commission and Light Commission.
Do they know to do that? What if they only pull electric and not?
And Diane will remind them that they should be pulling both, which I think happened this past year. So yes, obviously the town clerk understands that, so the town clerk is educating. And that person didn't know, it wasn't like they wanted to run for light board, it wasn't they didn't want to run for the water board. They just
And
don't
the
understand.
rationale for the two boards goes back to the separate funding?
No, I think it's probably to the legislation that formed them.
Yeah.
They were formed at different times.
Electric.
Within probably the same 12 months, but they were formed differently. And then, I don't know the history, 113 years ago, but I think they were always managed as under one group.
Right, but you consider them one board?
Yes, we have one board, we have one logo, we work with each other across the aisle.
And you go to both meetings? Because you're on both boards? Do you
Was that
consider
I think he said it's only one meeting though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, nobody's ever,
Was that what the
Have one
state
seat
was
on.
getting at, though? That it should be two boards that have two meetings, that it's not really proper to have
No,
one
I think
meeting with
they
two
were going
boards?
after just the water department, not to be part of the town.
Oh,
Why
then it should be on the...
isn't there one board?
Well, again, it may come back to the fact that the electric department, though, by state law is so different, though. So it may come down to that. I have no idea, I would guess it, or it's just because that's the way it's always been.
Yeah.
The state
That's
state
not-
set it up differently.
Yeah, right. So,
Has there
that
ever
would-
been an occasion when someone ran for the board of water commissioners and didn't run for the light and won? So you had an odd person sitting on one board, one the other?
not to my knowledge, not in the last 50
Could happen.
years. Yeah, it could.
Rare.
Is that
That's
something that when we get to boards and commissions, we'd at least want to clarify for transparency's sake? Just note, I mean, I don't know what the typical charter might include, but even if it's not a change, one of the things was explained to us that a charter can just serve to clarify, like, what the actual process is.
Yeah, one of the things we're finding going through this is just getting the information exactly how things work. You know, well, there's a town meeting vote here, and there's a bylaw passed here, and at least something like this brings it all in one place, so you can go and find it, so that's.
Is there any reason not to combine the boards?
I'm not sure if you can, but it would be nice.
Madam Chair, not sure whether Anthony or Mel have any experience with this type of a situation. You may want to pass them.
Are you there? There he goes.
We're here, we've been listening. Is the question specifically about the board, or?
Yeah.
The municipal light and water.
Light and water being together versus separate.
Required to be separate versus can it be one?
Well, the elected boards is the section we're going to get to next. We're usually going to spend a lot of time clarifying, you know, the charter would clarify the election procedure and how they would be, you know, their spheres of influence. So that will be something that we spend time on. It sounds like this is that the manager here really runs the day-to-day operations, and it is correct saying the boards are your policy setting entities?
Correct.
Yeah.
Just consist on how we're getting everything else set up, so.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to see if there is something that says in some state legislation that one has to have a separate light board and one has to have a separate water board, or not. Like, yeah.
Well, again, I haven't pulled the legislation, but it sounds like we get to the second.
You just went very, very.
Anthony, we heard you before, now you're soft.
Unless they did something
Oh.
with
No, it's him.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
So the next section is the review of these elected boards, and so we will pull the legislation relative to this. So if there was a special act that, you know, special acts do allow communities to deviate from, you know, from the standard of the state law. So that would be the first thing that we look at to determine, you know, if you're operating under a special act and maybe you don't want to change that, then we'll take some pieces of that and memorialize that in the charter.
Betsy, I'll save you time. It's a special act of 1911. It's on our website.
There you go.
All right.
So you've got
Structure review as well. There's 2 pages on this.
You've got an electric board and a light
Great.
board, correct?
Electric and water.
Electric and water. What about this? What about this? What's coming in? The sewer?
Sewer.
How is? There's not a board for the
Water commissioners.
water commissioners. They'll be okay.
It's a division of the law.
It's a division of the water department. Yep.
Gotcha.
3 boards.
We have meetings, we just consider it one board view to think about it. One section of the meeting deals with what's going on with the water department, one part. You've been to those meetings. And
Yeah, you do a nice job with regard to, there's a segmented agenda that addresses with regard to what you're going to cover. You just move right through it. Yeah, in my experience, it works very, very well.
Yeah, and that filters down through the employees. I mean, electric linemen views themselves as an LLWD employee, and there might be some days that they have to help, you know, somebody in the water department, and vice versa. Everybody views themselves as a light and water department employee.
All right, anybody else have anything? I mean, we got a lot to do tonight, so go
I have
ahead.
one question, just because we're coming across this in different ways. Just want to point out, as much for all the other committee members, that when we talk about, because technically town employees, as we've said, town employees, and we're getting into some aspect of the language that Betsy was referring to with regard to a select board member cannot also be simultaneously a town employee. And at times we've teased this a little bit with regard to what if a fireman or a policeman wanted to become that. And now, I must say, learned through this discussion that now I need to broaden that to the other 45 employees who theoretically could, if we were to go in this route with regard to a charter, find themselves, okay, they would not be allowed if language were written such that they couldn't be allowed because it was just an absolute, no, a select board member cannot be receiving. And I'll just put my 2 cents. Initially, it strikes me there's a great deal of independence such that it wouldn't be a concern, but I wonder whether the public, and I don't think it's worthy of going down this rabbit hole, but I also want to point out that we just saw an expansion of the town employees, if you will, of 45 people that I hadn't considered prior to tonight, so, but it doesn't cause me concern, just want to make noted.
So what you're saying is that if that was to pass, those 45 employees wouldn't be able to serve on the select board?
Theoretically,
Yeah.
if,
I'm not concerned about that.
If they live
Yeah.
yeah, correct,
They're
if, again,
voters, yeah.
there's a lot of ifs, but.
Okay.
Okay.
Michelle, do you have anything you want to add? Anything that you think is a concern, something that could be better, or just in general comment at all?
Not on the portions Nick spoke about, but just to what Mr. Rouse just commented on. I mean, there's a thing called special exemptions, the conflict of interest law. So it depends on which position you had first, whether it was appointed or elected, if you can play both.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more to dig into there. It's not just if it's in the charter, it's good to go. So I would take a look at the conflict of interest law and the special exemption portion.
Are there any concerns that you have, Michelle, with regard to the crossover from what I hear you say? And I think that's really what we're looking by having the two of you here, to make sure that one person didn't think it worked this way and another person thought it worked that way. I hear you pretty much in sync with regard to understanding the specific lines with regard to how things are administered, and there's nothing there that raises concerns.
No, there's no concerns. I met with Nick the first week I got here, I think, and we went over kind of how the dynamic was, how it operates, and it's been fine ever since. And I don't see any concerns there.
And there's good agreements in place documenting these service agreements between you and the town for Michelle and payroll. There's good documents documenting all that?
No.
I mean, it's not documented, it's really in your role, right? So if you have a payroll and benefits coordinator, that payroll and benefits coordinator is doing a certain piece of that, so it's in their job description. It doesn't necessarily spell out light and water employees separately.
You're referring to the payment in lieu of taxes that
Whatever the deal is,
That piece,
whatever
I don't know.
you're paying some large amount of money for services. for
That's
them.
talked about in general law. Mass General Law 164 dictates those roles and the payment of lieu taxes and so forth.
I'm sorry, it's, all you're getting, did you say that you're paying a fee for HR and payroll services in addition to a payment in lieu of taxes?
Part of that, yes, which is all spelled out.
Where's
It's all spelled out in Mass General Law on how that operates.
Are you getting more at how payroll processing and IT and those services are provided? Should there be some agreement between the parties for those specific
for the
services?
760 specifically?
Yeah.
It's a document that commits.
Yeah, what's the
Or-
deal?
or
What's the deal?
how
What's the
often is
basis
it
for the
reviewed?
amount, and what's the
Yeah.
term of the agreement, how long will it
Permanent
last?
service
and
level.
What are the services provided under this arrangement? Weekly payroll, bi-weekly payroll processing services, ad hoc human resource advisement,
It's
onboarding.
really for the town, like when the town went from they used to pay every week, they went to every 2 weeks. We didn't have a choice, that was, that's what the town decided, that's what we had to go with.
But, for example, it used to be share, or maybe you did some of the IT for the town. I know they used to be more commingled, and now you're more separate. So when that separation happens, where does it get documented? Okay, now we don't pay you for this anymore, we're paying for this, and who does what? Or does it? Is it really just an agreement, things go? I think that's kind of what Kevin's getting to, right? No, there's a hand up here. Anthony?
Yeah, so, well, I would say at this point, it may actually make more sense for the committee to maybe ask for just a copy of the pilot to look at, and then maybe have a sort of more direct conversation about some of these individual questions once you've had a chance to look at that document, at the pilot agreement.
Yep.
The document that you're referring to before that's on your website, is that the one we're talking about, or what?
Or the,
Which document?
There actually is no pilot agreement,
Okay.
okay.
and
Yeah.
it's a voluntary payment from the light department.
Well,
Per Mass General Law 164.
Yeah.
I was
Well,
curious,
that probably should be
the water
formalized,
department
right?
is technically an extension of the town, correct?
They're an extension of the town,
Yes.
correct.
So even though they can operate under their own, they have their own sort of revolving fund where they can pull their funding from, they're still a part of the town, and that would make more sense in terms of the operation of the payroll and things of that nature. I thought someone said that there was a pilot agreement, which I was a little surprised by.
Pilot payment,
think-
not agreement.
Okay, so that'll go on the tracker, Charlotte, right? It's not part of the charter, at least for a recommendation or something I put out there that
Yeah.
To at least clarify, yeah.
things get
Okay.
bigger and more complex and
Yeah.
be documented. Okay?
Okay.
One sort of out there question. Is there any circumstances in which the light and water department could on its own decide, we're going to drop Littleton as a customer and go somewhere else? I know the board is all Littleton people, but is there anything?
No,
So you
we can't
don't-
even expand. During deregulation in the mid-90s, the territories were established, and we have an obligation to serve.
Okay. So that's not like you can just pull up and say, yep, we're tired of you guys.
No, I mean, the town could sell us. I think it's consecutive town meeting was the whole process to sell us. But with the cheapest electric rate in the state, I'm not sure why you.
Yeah, I know.
And
keep it.
and on those, after those ice storms, and like,
Yes.
we're back up and running like this, and everybody else is like, well, who goes?
No, we're obligated to serve.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, good, we're good? Everybody good?
Yeah, like Anthony's telling us, we're gonna talk about all this stuff next time around.
Oh, Anthony?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of it, yeah. But thank you. This is what we needed. We just needed the information direct and, so, yeah, go ahead.
Question more unrelated to light and water, but HR.
Okay,
Is that okay
yeah.
for the next section?
Go for it.
Or just, I wondered, it was, last time we had a question about senior work-off and how that related to, like, one's employee status.
When we talked about that, comes back to the, if you're on the select board and are you being paid, and so if you're senior work off, you're considered a town employee, right?
Yes.
So that's another exception we'd have to put in if we choose
Okay.
to do that. And the veteran program is the same way, correct?
Okay.
So senior work-off people get a W-2?
Yes.
They do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's a cap.
Yes.
Maximum of 100 hours, currently at $15 an hour per the town. Mass law allows it to go up to $2,000 instead of $1,500, but it's been chosen to remain at the $1,500. Discussion with the elderly and human service director.
After taxes, and that's not after taxes, but taxes do get taken out too, so it's all, yeah.
That's good. I would think we would, to Charlotte's point, I think we would deal with town employees like fire and police similarly to how we consider, should we go down this rabbit hole with regard to water, electric.
Yeah, it's just a matter of putting in the exceptions though if we choose to do
Yeah,
that for
I just
for
think it was
senior,
a
for veterans and so on.
clarify
Yep.
from
Mhm.
the last minutes, just want to make sure we got that, thanks.
Okay. All right, thank you. Unless you want to tell us something more.
More questions? But, feel free, if any questions pop up, just shoot me an email, I can come back in, whatever.
Will do. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so, well, Jim's here now, so why don't we just move into Jim so he can go home? And then we can do our other stuff after that. So I think this was back when we had the select board in, we were going to go through, we had a list, you have the list of questions? Oh, good for you. I have to go through my pile of stuff here.
Can I suggest before, because Michelle, are you going to stay during Jim, or are you going to head out?
I'll stay during dinner.
Okay, then I'll
This is interesting.
stop.
Don't mind me.
I'm here, report. So, I think you've seen some of these questions, Jim, before. I don't know how many of some of them even we clarify as we go forward ourselves, but you want me to do it? You want to do it? Can you clarify the current thresholds for contract approval, including when select board approval is required?
There is currently a dollar limit, I believe, it was, I think it's anything over $50,000 for a contract requires select board approval. They can authorize me at a select board meeting, though if it was such as a paving contract was $400,000 or $500,000, they authorize me to sign it, so they can do either or. That's how it currently is.
Okay. I think
Do you
we've
feel
got,
like-
go ahead.
Do you feel like that limit is too low?
I do. Yes.
What would you propose, and how does the limit get considered for change periodically?
Not that I'm aware of, it does not get reviewed in regards to change. I think it's the comfort level with the select board. But I think it, I think it, I don't have any dollar figure off the top of my head.
Jim, can I ask for clarification? So a fire truck, it was, I don't know how things work exactly, but I presume that in the budget, there was money budgeted for a new fire truck, yes?
And through the capital, yes.
And
Yes, sir,
then later on, we work out the terms for a fire truck, and there's a contract for that fire truck, yes?
Correct.
So that fire truck costs $500,000. You can't sign that?
That is correct, I cannot.
You have to.
More like 1.4. So,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be.
No, I don't.
Earlier on in my career, they were 500,000.
So would it be possible to have an understanding of what the average or the sort of typical contract is? I'm thinking as Littleton also grows, we're a larger town, like one would assume that most contracts are increasing, and therefore there would be a sort of quantifiable reason also to bump that limit for again, efficiencies and, with a growing town.
If I understand the question correctly, you're looking at, it's almost like as the town grows, the tier of a contract grows, and which gives the town manager the authority. Is that?
Well, just thinking, if the average contract is increasingly above that limit, seemed to make sense to.
It's not. There's probably a handful of contracts, such as the paving contract I just made reference to. Kevin made reference to a piece of capital equipment. If there is a capital project that is going on or anything, but that's typically the capital projects. If it's not being paid for cash, then you're looking at bonding, which requires the treasurer's and has to go before the select board in any community.
So now I'm just curious, so now if you wanted to change that limit, where is that even said this is the limit? Where does that get? Is that just an agreement with the select board? Or is that?
No, I believe it's in policies or, I've seen it written down.
Okay.
I'll make sure that you get a copy
All
of
right,
it,
thank you.
of course.
Did we ask you, what's the limit right now, 50?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And you said that you think that's maybe conservative?
Yes, sir.
Any thoughts about what you recommend maybe would be appropriate?
To go to a number, I have no, 250 maybe, something like that. Maybe because paving contract is always, close to $400,000 or $500,000. Maybe that's the limit. But it's, there's not a lot of contracts that would slow things up to that size. It's really the smaller ones that aren't an issue. It's fine with the select board.
And if you're not authorized as a select board, like the whole select board or a majority of the select board have to sign it then?
Some contracts require 3, some contracts require 1 signature.
Okay.
So,
All right, different topic, supervision and delegation. How do you currently supervise staff across departments where authority is shared or delegated via MOUs?
It depends on the board, the elected board. Some are very hands-off, others are micromanagers, so you're getting that department head that is feeling like I'm being pulled by in both directions. It's really trying to maintain to benefit to benefit the mission of the Board of Commission and the employee, because you don't want to put the employee, it's the last thing I want to do is put the employee in the middle of anything. So it's something that you try, and my approach at least is to have a collegial relationship with the Board and Commission. And it's such as we just recently had, went through performance reviews. And I had reached out to every chair on the Board and Commission that we have MOUs with about how would you like to proceed, and there's the collegial thing, how would you like to proceed with the review for Billy or Sally or whomever. Some didn't even answer me, but I still went forward in a manner of looking at it as if, from my perspective of my experience working with those individuals, and it's and just letting those MOU department heads understand that it's the same environment as the other department heads that report directly to me. It's an open door. What can I do? If there is an issue, I'm not a gotcha type of a manager. I'm here to find a solution in a collaborative way, team environment. So that's how I approach it with everybody. And but the same also goes for accountability. I mean, there has to be deliverables and accountability that has to be maintained. But it's a great group. It really is.
Point of clarification on the example you just gave about performance reviews.
Yes, sir.
Were you doing that out of a courtesy? You were going to proceed anyway, but you were just reaching out to those managers as a courtesy?
I was reaching out to the chair and vice chairs of those boards and commissions. Yes, really as a courtesy, and really just to try and maintain that relationship, that collegial relationship with that board of commission, because I know in the past there has not been that type of relationship. So, and it affects that department head or the staff that they have reporting up to them. And I don't want to do that. That's not fair to that department head. And so, hence, that's why I did that.
So there is a documented process and policy for performance reviews.
There is. Absolutely. And Michelle can talk to you ad nauseum about it.
And do you think that a shift where those department heads do report directly to you would allow for more of that consistency and the kind of clarification of that role and lines of accountability, whereas it seems like maybe now through the MOU, it's a bit of a roundabout way of trying to designate that. So I could imagine even under the best of circumstances, maybe there's some confusion or, I guess, what would be your recommendation for that?
It's complete clarity by taking the elected board, taking that authority away from them and allowing the professional manager to manage that department head. You will never convince me otherwise. I think it's in the best interest because, this whole thing, the Charter Review Committee came up when I was, quite honestly, being completely transparent. It was an area of concern, and the select board in my interview process had said, we will make a commitment to you that we will go through the process to have a Charter Review Committee. And the way I understand it, and Michelle can correct me if I'm wrong, the employees really wanted it. Because in as much as I honestly think our board, the select board is a great select board, they're fantastic. But that can change, just like any position, any elected position, it can change tomorrow. And we could, unfortunately, there could be some, steps back in regards to, because the pressure of select board members and also boards and commission members in saying to staff, we'll get you a raise here, or we'll get you a bump there, or something like that when it comes time. It's not fulfilled, and the person is disappointed. So that message really came from the employees saying, we want to report up to one person. We don't like to be pulled in 10 different directions.
Jim, can I ask a question first? You had mentioned that there were boards and commissions that you sent something to and they didn't reply when you were talking about a performance review?
Correct.
That would have me concerned, that's...
Yeah, I mean, I did it, so, but I still went forward, and it was a very positive and constructive and supportive and realistic process, and that department head was fine with it.
So do you see certain boards and commissions acting more independently than others, and is that a concern of yours?
Very much so. Very much so.
Okay, Anthony?
Yeah, not to be too pedantic,
Can you get
but
closer to your microphone,
I would
please?
like to-
Anthony?
Can you hear me?
Thank you. Now we can.
Okay, yeah, sorry, not to be too pedantic, but I always like to just clarify here is, I think sometimes when we talk about this particular issue with charter commissions, you know, everyone's got different levels of sophistication around this, but, you know, sometimes people can think like everyone is reporting to or getting permission from the town manager or the town administrator on, you know, anything related to hirings, firings, discipline, what have you. What this type of provision, though, really means is, you know, department heads are still running their department, but everyone really is answerable to the town manager, whether he or she is, you know, getting into the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day, and basically everybody has to be on the same policy, or at least, you know, everyone that's sort of covered under this, that they all report to the town manager. So I always like to just add that clarification, that it's not necessary that the town manager is going to be running the departments over the head of the department heads. It is really that everyone is responsible and will be held to the same standard in terms of personnel policies.
Yeah.
Correct. We're all adults, so the department heads, they're in a position, they're trained, educated professionals. I mean, there are some things, people in their respective departments, they've forgotten one that I will ever know, and I will never try and be that subject matter expert. I rely on them tremendously, and that's how I've always managed individuals, and let them do their job. And that's it.
So you said that what you would hope for is clarity.
It would offer clarity, correct.
In terms of the relationship and the accountability and the authority and the structure and so forth.
Correct, and the morale.
How would you achieve that clarity? Would you do away with MOUs? Would you revise MOUs? Would you get rid of them? How would you achieve the clarity?
Right, the MOUs would be eliminated in their entirety. Right, and those department heads would report directly up to the town manager. Exactly.
So there's no need for me to ask you if there's any particular MOUs that you're really concerned about. It's MOUs that speak to anything other than these positions reporting up to the town manager.
Correct.
Michelle, I'd like to ask you, so have you seen things like this in other towns, and what?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so, not kind of hard when your boss is right here, but tell us, because we know where he is, but.
Your boss.
I know, she'll tell us what you,
No,
and you're okay with her saying what she wants to say.
Completely okay.
Right. So.
It's the same in a lot of other towns. I mean, I've only been in 2 others, one as a director and one as a lower level HR professional. So it's very similar. You run into the issue, and the perfect example is performance evaluations. Who's doing the evaluation? Who's giving input? Where is it coming from? Who's really managing the day-to-day versus, I'm just overseeing policy. You still have that issue of, well, when we have a 5-member board that is writing your review, but they're not in here running the day-to-day or know what you're working on day-to-day. They know the overall kind of 30,000-foot level. So just as Jim spoke, it's the same issues.
So what about when you get to the firing, but mostly the hiring of a new director? So now what's related, who's the driver, and who's advising, and who's directing the hiring process then in this?
My favorite HR answer, it depends. So it depends on the board or committee, or whomever is the appointing authority, right? So I typically assist running the hiring process, and depending on what position it is for, dictates what we do for that process. You have the same basic structure for the process, but how you get to the end result might differ a little bit depending on the position. Example, if you have a police lieutenant, maybe the chief is kind of getting the panel together and everyone together, but they have a different, they might have an assessment center, or you're not going to have an assessment center for an admin assistant in another department. So it can be different.
Okay, but I'm still thinking more like just use an example, I'm not picking on anybody, library director. So does the library committee go out and start the thing and then
That's not a good example.
That's not a good
Because
example.
it's trustees, it's always the trustees that take the lead on that.
Okay, so give me another example, because you know what I'm getting at. So what's-
Conservation.
Conservation, okay.
Okay, I had zero to do with that. Normally, that being a department head, because I would absolutely be involved in that.
But again, what I'm trying to get a handle on the involvement part, right, is so who's driving, and so somebody has veto power maybe, or somebody has but how does this really work? Does the town drive it, and then you're getting input from the board because they're more subject matter experts maybe in that area, or not?
So I
or
drive the process.
You drive the process.
But they are the appointing authority. And so they typically, at the end of the day, even if the panel liked candidate A and they liked candidate B, they can choose to go with candidate B.
Today. But, right. But what we're saying is going forward, if it were instead everybody reports to the town manager or town administrator, that would not be the case, correct?
Correct.
Then, right.
I have actually been in a situation where in a community that a similar situation of a particular board and commission was looking to hire an individual to be that director. And I said, I will leave if that person is hired. Because here I've got a professional background and it's a small world here in Massachusetts, and I had firsthand knowledge of experience. And whereas there were people on that particular interview committee that were part of the board, that were very enthusiastic about that person, and I could give 50 examples why. So.
Okay, so again, just trying to get in my head. So we're going to hire one of these directors. You're running the process, and the town administrator, town manager will be on the panel or the committee that's choosing, as well as people from the elected board.
Currently, no.
I know, but maybe going forward, I'm trying to think, how would we want it to work? How should it work if we go this route? How would we have that work up? Because I'm trying to figure out the balance there, like who's...
Going forward,
Yeah.
that would be less challenging, yes.
Okay, but again, but what it is, again, I'm trying, so you're driving the process, Jim's on it, or whoever the town manager is, town administrator is, whoever the people from that board are, whether they choose one or all the board, or however they do it. And then you come to a consensus, or everybody have veto power? How does that work?
We typically come to a consensus.
Okay.
Typically, you review all your notes from the multiple interviews, the scoring, everything in the packet, and then we typically come to a consensus. Go ahead.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
But
think
what
the question
I
is
think
more
we're
going
speaking, I
forward.
think we're speaking more in terms of how it is now.
I want to know how going forward, how would we set this up so it would work the way we
But
want
I'd
it to
like to
work?
redirect the
Okay.
question, because I'm concerned that the response has to do with how things are currently going on this one, because Jim, you're the TA potential, as we discuss, let's depart, maybe making a recommendation that could lead to strong TM. And therefore, I realize, from my perspective, you might want to do it differently or envision it differently with regard to your relationship with those elected or appointed boards, committees, commissions that currently exist within our department. And so how do you envision having a process in which you're one member, an equal member of a group, or do you view as you as a strong TM in that situation would have a more significant role with regard to the selection process or the removal process and the suspension, the whole
The
nine
team,
yards?
the TM is the appointing authority, bottom line. That's it. So that in partnership with HR will go through the process. As a courtesy, typically an appointed board or commission member, the chair will be asked to join, or his or her designate as part of the process. So you would have a panel, and then it would really, go through, a standard list of questions. Everyone is asked the same thing, and ultimately we talk amongst ourselves, and it comes back, and it's the final decision is whoever's the appointing authority. And because that individual has to live and die by the performance of that department head.
So then you would have then you would have consistency in
Correct.
whilst you are gathering inputs to make an informed decision. You'd have the TM being the appointing authority for department heads, and the TM ultimately being accountable and responsible for any kind of performance issues. Again, putting aside technical
Yep. Right.
inputs,
Exactly.
etc. But that would seem to be a very consistent approach.
Correct.
Anthony? I'm sorry, look.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to sort of raise the idea that, at the charter, you're probably not going to get into the sort of the nitty-gritty of the hiring process in terms of articulating that in the charter. I think the current language that's in front of the body really places that authority in the town manager's position. And then the town manager, sort of for each position, would sort of use their best judgment along with HR to create the best process to get the best candidate and do the best vetting. But, at the sort of charter level, you're looking at where best to place that authority in terms of hiring. And so the current language places that gives the town manager flexibility to implement it in the best way possible.
So Anthony, you wouldn't have it put down that the town manager makes the final choice. Should it be, we also put in there with the input of the board or the board chairman?
I'll turn over to Mel. I don't think we would recommend that. I believe the current language.
If they're the appointing authority, they can create the process as they.
Just asking.
Because then it assumes that if you designate the town manager as the appointing authority, they also have the authority to design the process in the best interest to get the best candidate. And then you can kind of stop there.
It's just, this will be important, I think, though, if we go forward with this, in terms of rolling it out and explaining to people, things are changing. And to those boards and the other people, that this is a difference in how it is
It would
today.
be a
So
change,
you can say it doesn't go in the charter, but we still have to have some sense of how it will work so you can explain to people what's going to change. It might seem, I think the other side is the hiring process, that's one thing. Now, the other side of that is firing. It's the same. And that may feel a little different to people, right? Now, you're going to fire somebody, and I really like that person, And so, but that's...
No, you're right. And you would establish a process that really is just that. It's established, and that's a process you want to go through. And I think typically what you would see with the town manager, he or she would engage the chair of that specific, of a particular board or committee or commission to be part of the process, or at least have, because you want people to have an investment in the decision, especially if they're going to be working for it.
That would be
And maybe
part of
just
the
to
personnel
answer-
process policy anyway, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that come under your process, the personnel or
Due process.
human resources manager would do?
I think, you could turn, it'll consist of at least 3 members, the HR director, the town manager.
That's what I'm getting at, yes.
Maybe, a member of that particular board.
So we wouldn't have to
commission.
put that detail
Right.
in here, but it would be part of the personnel or HR
Right.
process for hiring and firing and whatever else.
And also to your point, Betsy, I think when we make these recommendations, the idea is that we are capturing our deliberations as well, I think, and sort of laying that out as an explanation of why maybe we recommended something. So I agree with Anthony's comment, the charter language may just be that very top line about appointing authority, but then when someone says, well, why the change, we'll have a kind of nice, clear documentation of the pros, the cons, and like why things might change.
I do disagree with department heads that are hired confirmation by the select board. I don't agree with that.
Say it again, please.
I do not agree with department heads that are hired or confirmed by the select board, with the exception of police and fire.
Just because you think that's a sort of essentially an unnecessary conflation of the
Well,
roles
it's
and
not the
responsibilities.
appointing authority.
Is then it's, yeah, because the buck doesn't actually then stop with the TM.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly, 100%.
So I just want to point out that just 2 weeks ago, we had 4 select board members here, and I heard, I think, you may have heard things differently, but I think I heard at least 2 of them give a theory of concern, not on the hiring process so much as on the firing process, with regard to comments being bias or personality conflict in the direction that that I heard their words to be concerned with regard to how the authority of one individual that gets into those 2 points of bias or personality conflicts, whereas the strength with regard to a 5-member select board to be considering. And so I don't say that to oppose what I think I'm hearing you say. I say that to point out these are some of the inputs that we're receiving from different people that have a role in our, input and that we have to deliberate on and have to have a pretty good discussion, which we've not had as yet, as to how we're feeling about what we're hearing.
I know Mel had his hand up at one point, but it's down now.
But when you have personalities driving, emotions driving decisions, the select board has a bigger problem than that.
And so, apologize, I sometimes do this, sorry. In that regard, I think I heard Mark Rombacher specifically, and saw some nodding heads in the 4, when he said, with regard to that specific point, that you'd have a bigger problem, and I think Betsy, you may have been the one that was saying, but you, the select board, holds that strong TM theoretically accountable, and therefore you have the ability to suspend or fire. And I heard Mark pretty quickly push back, yeah, but that's expensive and that's difficult, and quite frankly, Littleton has some experience with that. So it was coming from that perspective. And again, it's just elaborating with regard to we're not getting a consistent, cohesive set of inputs. We're getting points that are worthwhile being made by multiple sources of input.
I actually like to debrief on the discussion that you're referring to.
I agree.
Because I had some takeaways from that discussion. And so different, absolutely, we've got different perspectives cooking here on some very important points. And
I think it does, if you draw parallels though to other sort of organizational setups and efficiencies, I mean, I think that's always a concern. If I'm a manager and I manage someone, do I or do I not trust to delegate in that person the right to manage their portfolio of work? And at some point, for efficiency's sake, you have to actually delegate certain authority to your subordinates and expect them and empower them to do the right thing. And yeah, it's not pleasant and it's really frustrating and extremely inefficient if you then have to change that individual. I think as probably everybody in this room has had experience with. But that doesn't necessarily mean the right thing to do is to then hoard sort of authority at the top. I mean, that also leads to inefficiencies. So I think even if we're just drawing parallels with like what's good organizational practice, that tension is going to exist no matter where you look in any organization. And I would, when we deliberate, I think just recognizing that tension is always there, recognizing there's always going to be a fear that someone that you hire is maybe going to make a choice that you're not comfortable with, but management practice would sort of encourage us to think about you delegate authority in order to be efficient. And maybe that is in ensuring that a select board is able to identify the right candidate for this role? Because if you're empowering that role, then you'd want the right person
You're right,
to do
the
it.
delegating trickles down. So the select board will delegate to the town manager the authority to make the right hires at the department head level, and that trickles down. Now you have a town manager who has to, have confidence in his or her department head that, okay, if I'm a principal assessor, a chief assessor, or treasurer, and I want an assistant assessor, again, going back to they're the subject matter experts, I have to rely on them, and I have to trust them, and they have to understand that a town manager trusts their decision, and you lead by example, and so they are, and so they make the recommendation to the appointing authority and say, okay, you sure, and explain to me why this would be the person you would pick, and they would go through it, and you would support that. Okay, I can't speak enough against of no, so I support what you're saying, so let's do it.
Okay. Move on to another time. That was good. I think we got a lot, but that was a lot of the gray areas, so this is good.
You, Jim, I think said that you believe that the chief, fire and police chief should be appointed / hired by the select board, is that right? Did I hear
No.
that? No.
It should be confirmed.
Confirmed.
The appointing authority is still the town manager.
Is that the same approval for any department head, or is it special for those two?
Just those two.
So you would not have the select board approve, confirm any other recommended hires?
Correct.
So when you say confirmed, does that inherently mean that they could also deny?
Correct.
I'm letting this sink into my brain here, it takes a while.
It's okay.
So you would have,
Police and fire have always been, there's special, something separate needs to happen, but they're still a department, and yes, they've got other responsibilities and other laws they need to follow. Are there any other special groups? Like I know school is?
Yeah, the schools are autonomous.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But
So,
in your mind, are there
just
any
those
other
two. And
special categories?
nobody else special.
so you'd be the appointing authority for the police
The town manager would be, yes. That would be
Yep.
for police and fire, yes.
with veto, approval / veto denial by the select board
By the
for
select
those
board.
two positions.
Correct.
All police or just the chiefs?
Just the chiefs.
Town council,
That town council would be the select board, hire and fire and evaluate the select board, and also the town accountant would be as a checks and balances. You would have.
The auditor, correct?
Or the auditor in a
The
city.
CPA, yeah.
But at the town level, it's the accountant, because you need to have that checks and balances.
But
so those two positions would be.
Yeah, Michelle.
Yeah, but we're gonna get to that. No, let's not go down there now.
Two separate.
Yeah.
Select board would
Be an important discussion going forward.
hire, performance review annually with those two positions, yes.
They would report solid line to the select board?
They would report to the select board.
I believe that's.
Dotted
what it is
line
now.
maybe to you?
Nope,
No line to you?
no line of, again, you're looking at the checks and balances, is you need to have, as much as, every community is audited, you still have to give the residents and everyone a comfortable feeling that this person is not under my thumb or under the town manager. So they have to feel comfortable with questioning expenditures, confirming that the procurement process went through, and confirming that there's money in that account to pay for that purchase order.
Is the select board right now approving something called the payroll registers what do they call, what's it called?
Warrants.
Warrants.
Right.
Would the select board, under the vision that you have, that you're describing, would the select board continue to sign off on those payroll warrants, or whatever they're called?
No,
It would not?
no.
Who would?
It would be the CFO and the town manager.
What's the CFO currently called?
Finance director.
Finance director.
This would be, because the finance director typically here would wear a couple hats. CFO would wear one hat.
So in the spirit of checks and balances, under the idea that the TA would appoint the police chief instead of the current select board,
Yep.
how does one ensure that, so would the police chief, I'm sorry, the police chief would still report to the select board?
Nope.
So how would one ensure that there is no corruption between, when you talk about putting the thumb on someone, if you can put your thumb on the chief of police, I mean, that's a pretty substantial power.
Well, I mean, I don't believe any police officer that has risen to those ranks of being the chief, or at least I haven't come across he or she that would jeopardize their career, or a town manager would jeopardize their career with trying to do that.
Yeah. And I'm not speaking to you or the current police.
Oh, I know
I'm
you.
just saying
No, I know.
There is potentially a conflict of
This
interest.
is Kyle's
there.
life, right? Is
Management.
Well, there is, I mean, it's funny. I mean, when I was interviewing in a community for a new chief of police, I went through what you call an assessment center. So what I did is I get the top 3 finalists, and I had 0 input on the assessment center. The assessment center is basically an outside vendor that comes in that will bring people within law enforcement, public safety as panelists. And they would be over the course of 2 days. There would be a number of different exercises that are law enforcement related. And then at the end of it, scores the whole 9 yards. Then at the end of it, I would meet with the HR director and the people that put on the assessment center and say, okay, here are your top 5 people. Out of 35, here are your top 5. And that's it. So now it's a matter of interviewing those top 5 and who would fit right in the community. And one of the curveball questions that I would typically ask is, all right. And and because I've been doing this for a while, I'm kind of at an advantage, and I can know a lot of the same people and things of that nature. And I say, okay, look. Let's say I go out, for retirement partying after, and I get pulled over. I'm going to give you a call, and he'd say, and the answer that I want to hear is, hope you have a good lawyer, but I won't be answering that call. And so, people are...
Right, but that's you. I can't plan. What I'm trying to think of is, what about the next TA and the next TA? Will they be as an upstanding citizen as you
Well,
are?
I think the bigger picture is one of the select board people said one of their big responsibilities is to ensure there's no fraud, waste, and abuse, and protect the reputation of the town and the people that work for it, and the townspeople. So, what controls are built in along some of these processes that would give the select board, in the case of a strong town manager, insight into whether there's any fraud, waste, or abuse?
Well, you've got the town council, you have the town accountant or the city auditor that would do that. So things in a community, in every single community, are always going to come to the surface.
Right.
If there is something going on, it's always going to rise up. I don't care where you are. Nothing is ever a secret, for very, very long. And that would immediately spark off, whether it be an internal investigation, whether it be an outside investigator that comes in. But nothing is sacred at all. And that's how...
So one of the comments they said is they review the payroll warrant, and, occasionally they'd ask questions or push
Yep.
back. I mean, for a select board that's hands-on like that, and then to take that away, like, how would they continue to feel that they had a sense of what's going on, and that they felt connected to the decisions and part of the process?
And that has to do with the relationship that the select board has with the town manager. And clearly, and there's a relationship that both have an advantage, that they both benefit from. Both sides will benefit. I mean, obviously, the professional manager wants to perform with high standards and make sure that the 5 bosses that he or she answers to is happy and they're productive and everything. And it's something, at least during my tenure of things in this kind of a capacity, I've never not said, you can't talk to department heads now. You can't do that, you can't do this. Of course, you're gonna have select board members that are gonna be like, hey, there's not enough, I got a call from a resident, there wasn't enough salt put down on the street. Can you make sure you take another run up there or something? I don't care about that stuff. And in terms of transparency and looking in or anything, no problem whatsoever. Such as with the select board, I have a weekly meeting with the chair and the select board. Sometimes the vice chair will come in. I do a weekly report to the select board and I'm constantly communicating with them via text or email through the day and through the week. So there is that constant flow of information back and forth that's about as much as I can, whatever comes across me, and not the smaller, inconsequential things, but more of issues. Because one thing that I had said, and I think any good manager would say is, you don't want your 5 bosses to be in a community and have someone say something and have the select board go, oh, I didn't know that. That's the kiss of death in my eyes. So so that's it, and small towns don't stay quiet.
So if we were to propose, again, thinking about the messaging around some of these proposed changes, but let's take signing of payroll warrants as one of them, because in the draft charter language, it has, this is one of the town manager's responsibilities, right? Oversight over, and then it kind of lists a laundry list of things. In the sort of checks and balances column almost, would we want to then describe a situation where it would be a CFO who's also co-signing those, and a CFO is vested with that authority and responsibility, town manager, but then you also have the town council, you have the accountant. Right. I think what we're going to need to do if we're making any of those changes as a recommendation is to say it is not going to introduce risk, and in fact this recommendation would be more efficient or more effective. Again, just using that as an example, but does that sound right reasonable in the scenario that you're laying out?
Yes, exactly. So you would have the 3 signatures, the auditor, the accountant, the CFO, and the town manager to do that. So the checks and balances is always there.
Just getting 3 signatures every 2 weeks to sign everything.
Yeah, and especially seeing as they said that is also often come up, having already been signed by a department head, by a board.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
You've even had
there's payroll people, the employees, there's the department head. So it's gone through multiple reviews all the way up the ladder.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I can appreciate one thing that you said a while ago. It's not good for selectmen to talk to somebody and all of a sudden say, I don't know anything about it.
Exactly.
That happened to me in the past, and that's nothing more embarrassing than not being informed. Going back to the police chief and fire chief, though.
Yes, sir.
The impression I had when the select board was here is that they agreed with almost everything you said about the chairs and you being in charge, with the exception, they still wanted to hold on to the hiring and firing of the police chief and fire chief.
Well, at least some of them did. I'm not sure that was unanimous, but there were a couple of them that were very strong on that.
Yeah.
So,
just my question toward you,
I'm sorry.
is if the select board came out and actually said, the whole board came out and said, this is what we'd like to do, would you consider that type of thing? Would you like to see that in the charter? And you still appoint all the other board heads, but not those 2.
If that's the wish, if this is the decision of the body, of the Charter Review Committee, then that's the decision. I will live by that.
Okay.
I felt like there was a little bit of a nuance there where there was a desire from the select board to have some sort of final say, a sort of veto power, oversight, but that there would be consensus that an appointing authority could sit with the town manager as long as they had veto power.
There were a couple of them that were pretty adamant about, they thought that the police chief was at the same level as the town manager, and that he couldn't be.
Okay,
No,
yeah,
okay,
okay, I do
got it.
recall that, yeah, okay. So it's
I
still a
don't-
little
they're
bit
just-
mixed.
They're just not, they're not together, so.
Yeah,
They're-
yeah,
yeah.
okay, good point.
It's, by, you're taking, you're depoliticizing it, if you want to say. Because in all likely, you're taking two of the major, I mean, they're part of the big three, or the big four. You got the school superintendent, really, you need to have a strong relationship with your school superintendent, as far as I'm concerned. You've got your DPW director, your police, and your fire. And it's something that, you want to have it, just take the politics out of it completely and take it on merits. What's in the best interest? Because every decision a good town manager will make every single day is what's in the best interest of the community. It's not what's in the best interest of 3 out of my 5 bosses. It's not what's in the best interest of this board of commission or for me or HR. It's what's in the best interest of the community. And if you as long as you live by that, you're fine. And I, from my heart and hearts, believe that the best interest is the confirmation of those two appointments to the select board, but the appointing authority. And any promotion or anything like that has to go through within the police and fire departments has to go through the appointing authority also. Determination.
Okay, we'll move on to some other topics? Okay. Facilities management and leasing. What's your current role in managing, leasing, and improving uses of town buildings and land, and would you support language that limits the authority for certain types of leases, requires select board or town meeting approval for major agreements?
It's been my experience that the town manager is the caretaker of all town-owned property. Is basically if there is a lease being proposed for, let's say, an older school building or something to that effect. Should it go before the select board? Absolutely, for confirmation. It should not be an independent decision on that. Should it go to beyond that for a town meeting? I think it could be the select board represents the town well. That's what I'd say.
Is there a sort of lower limit there where there's a sort of leasing? I mean, we had talked about day use of facilities and things like that, which are a little bit less contentious, less interesting perhaps. And then, at a certain point, it rises, like you said, maybe an actual
multiple year leases.
Yeah, okay.
So, I mean, recently the select board gave the town administrator the authority to grant one-day liquor licenses. Just as on the condition that police and fire did not have an issue with it. If they did, then it would have to be vetted through the select board. But, okay, because typically they're not, 99 times out of 100, there's not an issue. So when that was done, not because of my office, it was really done for the individuals that were applying for it, just to expedite the process for those people, that's all.
Mm-hmm. Are there issues now with how things are? Are there things that somebody else has responsibility for, or can say yes or no to on the facility side that should be consolidated as well? Or are things kind of okay there?
No, things go well. I mean, especially with the addition of the facilities manager, Eric has done a very good job. He's very conscientious, hard worker. He always has in the best interest, and is always thinking to benefit the community and the town.
Probably look this up in the org chart, but Eric reports to you. So, just finalizing that then, the minutiae, I guess, of where those boundaries lie and for which to whom, that would be, we talked about maybe that being captured more at a policy level. if there was a sort of blanket statement in the charter that the town manager would have the oversight of leasing blah, 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 as per policy, and then there would have to then be some delineation of that, those specifics, I
Yes.
guess. Yeah, okay.
All right, moving along.
Can I ask a leading question?
You,
Whatever.
you, Rob?
Yeah.
Thank you. So I've chatted with a few folks about this topic from different disciplines / departments, boards, committees. And one pushed back pretty hard with regard to, do you know the volume of what's coming forward to that one individual? And so I found myself trying to push back, and this is part of the lead, trying to look for where you're going to deal with it, because I heard such things as, okay, the book walk is proposed on X trail, except would the approval authority really know there's rampant poison ivy all over that trail right now, so therefore a better idea would be such and such. And I said, fine. So you're making the assumption that the proposal includes somebody that's not going to ask questions of the various advisory groups and the people who know this stuff the best. And that seemed to satisfy that person.
Okay.
But then there were other statements made with regard to, but some people like, I'm gonna make this one up to not divulge who I spoke with. We have some annual events with regard to the use of Littleton Common, for example. You can think of the various holidays, and they're structural things. And I don't hope for the day if by chance somebody mistakenly gave, you're going to be permitted to use it that day when completely oblivious to the fact that, wait a minute, the Patriotic Commission or, XYZ is gonna come in and say, but wait a minute, how can you do that? You just pulled the rug out from under us. We always have that. It's almost tantamount to, we lay claim on an annual basis to that location on that day, et cetera. So how will you go about addressing a concern that I'm hearing with regard to just the sheer volume? Because right now, we probably have 5, 10 different groups that come and do rooms and locations, et cetera, and all of a sudden it could collapse through this recommendation into more or less you, who then has to deal with it.
Okay.
I know. I said, well, come on, let's just admit that.
Can someone else tell me what he said?
But is that the recommendation, to have all
But I think
go
that the
through
charter.
TA? Because that all seems like it's below the
Yeah.
position of the TA.
Who would it be?
The charter language currently states something, or the draft, right, that we're working with, something like the town manager would have oversight of.
Yeah. Right.
My understanding is that that authority would then be delegated appropriately according to the town manager, for
Right.
example, to this facilities manager. But I guess the question is that an overwhelming burden of work?
Well, let's simplify it. So the way we have it now, and I don't see it changing,
That's all.
it would be per building, such as the Liz next door, the center on Shattuck Street, they have meeting spaces available. Administratively, they would have to be checked on scheduling to be able to schedule something, and then the arrangement for having it, make sure it's opened, if there's a particular setup. So that would be done per building, just like it's done for this building, and like it's done for the library. So anything that we would have would continue to be that, in that manner administratively. Ultimately, however, if there is a hiccup, then you have to evaluate whether, is this something that could be systemic, or is it a one-off? How is it, and where, and if there was a breakdown, where did it happen? And what? Did I not answer the question?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
But I'm also trying to incorporate what I heard from Kyle and Charlotte with regard to, so very similar to how we have a distributed set of mother may I's and permissions given, that could continue going forward with this change that I see as a rather significant change.
Okay.
A resident or a group could come to one office, yours,
Yep.
to say, I would like, here's my form, and you can then distribute it to any of a half dozen to do
Yeah.
it. Because currently, that does not exist. To the best of my knowledge, we've got various, you want the library, go to the library. You want school, go to school. You want park and rec, or you're on park, go to park. And I find that to be a little bit crazed.
Well, you
That's
don't,
just me, one of 9.
yeah, but don't forget, you've got 3 separate entities which have care, custody, and control of 3 different properties.
And we in the charter are contemplating change.
Okay.
So I'm trying to bring out that aspect of change with somebody or a couple who are pushing back, and you just provide the answer of still, I think you're saying a very decentralized process. However, the change could be, it could all start from a funnel that is in one office.
True.
That's the point that I was trying to get with the question.
No, yeah, absolutely. And typically, people will walk into the TA office and say, how do I do this? Or they'll go to the town clerk's office, or whatever door is open, that when they walk on into the second floor, they'll walk into, and it could be the assessor's office. How do I do this?
I think the part that I'm hearing, feeling in the community,
Yeah.
with some of the folks that I'm interacting with,
Yeah.
is right now, because these silos of authority exist,
Yeah.
you may have to chase, or the silos may not give the same level of responsiveness. If it's one place and you're
I see
held
what you're saying.
accountable,
Yeah.
then we should have an expectation that within X days after you submit something, just like a
Yep.
FOIA request
Yep.
goes in, and 10 days later, you should have a response. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
No, I don't disagree with that. There should be established boundaries, and this is where I would love for, my office to be, if there is an unreasonable delay, if there is unreasonable pushback that they feel is unreasonable, I'd love to be involved.
Thanks.
And just to then clarify, and there's sort of 2 perhaps issues that we can document here. One is the general consensus around just overall responsibility for this process, especially if department heads are anyway reporting to a town manager. So there's a sort of the buck stops with town manager for this process. And then on the other side, the actual process itself. How does this happen? And that could be an automated request system, that could be a consolidated or centralized process through an individual, but whatever that is.
None of which will be in the charter.
Yeah. But something we've been sidebar documenting
Right.
to say, oh, it came up,
Right.
hey,
Right.
maybe you might want to think about having a centralized request system. But again, yeah, totally separate from charter language.
Right.
Yeah.
As whatever comes of the group, there will be an investment that's going to be necessary. So, and whether it be with personnel, whether it be with, could be in some way, shape, or form. So, for instance, some examples, and I'm not suggesting that here, when you have a TM, when you've got the town manager, now you have a dedicated administrative person that would be assigned just for the select board. And then you would have your TM administrative individual that would help the day-to-day operations. You would have a specialized feature such as what you were just explaining, Rob, of one central location to be able for that individual. That individual can also do, with the annual report, with the warrant, with the select board agenda. If anyone has any questions or concerns from residents, they've got a one-stop shop within and that office and the TM office is like a hand in glove.
Good.
All right, moving along. Committee oversight. So how would you manage appointments, supervision, and potential removal of members across 20 to 30 appointed boards and committees if granted that authority in the charter?
Okay, it's, First of all, you're dealing with 30 boards and volunteers of individuals that are giving up their time and everything, and you need to identify that, respect that, and appreciate that. It's something that I would embrace it in such a way to offer assistance whenever needed. If there is administrative stuff, is there personnel issues to help out, anything like that. In the event that, let's say, a particular behavior took place that would warrant removal of a board or committee member, I would not recommend that be done emotionally or quickly. You need to engage with the select board, and you need to bring them in. You also have to engage with town council to make sure. You have to engage in, because they're ultimately employees, volunteers are employees, so I would engage with HR. So it would not be a quick knee-jerk reaction. At least that's not how I would operate. I would be very engaged and say, here's the scenario, here's the situation, and then hence the communication to that individual would be scheduled, and along with removal from that board or commission.
In that situation, if you had the authority, you were doing the appointments and so on, how does that get communicated to the community, that this person's been appointed? I mean, right now, it kind of happens in select board meetings, right? Maybe a quick, yes, thank you, da, 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 but it's kind of done that way.
Well, there's a couple ways we can do that. Well, there's a couple ways we can do that now. It's, yes, you continue with the select board, at the select board, just in the sense of during the town manager's report, you want to let everyone know of X, Y, Z. You would also have whatever that board and commission is, they'll be on television, they would also make that announcement through the chair. Then you would also, we've got our newsletter. We have, Karen Morrison, as you know, does the podcast. Yep. So there's different ways, we'd have it on our website. There's different ways of getting word out there, communicating that.
Okay, that just came to mind. Right, the next section here is about MOUs, but I think if we're kind of thinking that those kind of go away, we don't really need to ask a lot of questions about that. I'd rather move on to some other ones because we're getting short on time already. All right, here's about light and water. Do we need to ask questions about that anymore? Are we good on that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Budget development role. There's going to be a whole other section in this charter where we talk about finance and how that whole thing. But while we have you here, I guess we'll take a short, how you see this playing out going forward. How do you see that working? The whole budget process, the finance committee, who's doing what? And
yeah, I think a lot of it won't change. I think there's an exceptional finance committee here. They play a vital role, and there are some communities that finance committees are advisory only. They can say to the town manager, he or she, and say, well, we think you should take $200,000 here and put it over here. Thank you. I'll take that under advisement and not do a thing. Here, it's something that very engaging. I mean, and the success is in the pudding. I mean, it's extremely impressive. It would be the town manager's budget, develop the budget, you meet with all the department heads, you identify, you meet with the capital improvement committee, you meet with, and you develop the budget. And you present a balanced budget to the finance committee and the select board, and you start your budget process. But everything starts through the town manager's office with the CFO, and it's something that it's a team effort. You would have the town manager, CFO, finance people, person, HR would be there also in developing the budget. Budget message would go out beforehand to all department heads. That would be confirmed what that message would be with select board and finance committees. That would go out under the town manager's signature.
What would be the role of the finance committee in the development and presentation of the budget?
once it's presented, then, well, the finance committee would, they would, I know it's their desire to continue having, meeting with various department heads. So they would have the ability, at that time, once the town manager provides the budget, they would have the ability to make changes to that.
So just quoting our, again, very draft charter language, but the item that pertains to this says, prepare, this is under powers and duties of the town manager, prepare and present an annual operating budget for the town and present a capital improvement plan pursuant to article blah, blah, blah. So if we're essentially, whatever would be potentially codified in a charter sort of stops there, like prepare and present.
Correct.
How you go about doing that, probably detailed a little bit later, but would you have any objections to the way that is
Basically, I was done.
stated? Okay.
Rob?
How does the public participate?
The public participates during the budget hearings, not in developing the budget. I've never experienced.
Just for the record, I know a resident who sat through 6 hours, attempted to speak and ask a question, and was denied the most recent budget process. So I am concerned that as I understand it right now, and intentionally don't appeal to Tim as the town moderator, but it's felt to me like the only way that I can wedge myself in with what I view as a legitimate question is to go before everybody in the town meeting, which I think is absurd and not worthy of the question being asked in that body and in that setting. But I nonetheless think that legitimate questions should be asked and should be addressed along the process, very open with regard to whatever that process is. But I am of the concern that I've lived here 4 years, and in 3 years, I think every town meeting I've attended has had any number of public comments that I would categorize as being concerned with regard to the taxation in the town, that ultimately, the way my mind works to then propose some alternatives or come up with something else. What would you not want to do, in terms of being responsive to that question? And the town meeting is not in place. So I look forward to trying to understand how, when we get into finance committee specifically, or as we move along our deliberations, how the public can participate, because I think there's room for opportunity and participation.
I don't,
Let you know.
yeah, no, thank you, but during the development of the building of the budget, no way. Yeah.
I'm just saying, at some point in time, if not,
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be so curt, but as we're as the department head, we have HR, we're talking about personnel issues, we're talking about operations, we're talking about any areas of concern that may be, and that's inside baseball. And quite honestly, that's stuff that needs to be handled. And it's not a matter of not being transparent. It's a matter of not wanting to, people come to conclusions which are just so far off base. It's not even funny. So that's how that's my position.
Okay.
No.
Yes, Ken?
Yeah, no, I wanted to add that, I mean, this, to me, is a fundamental difference in how the budget gets developed. If the town manager can be responsible for the development of the town budget, I mean, historically, the finance committee has played a pretty outsized role in the development of the town budget, and statutorily, they are only an advisory committee. I mean, every finance committee is advisory only. Some take more authority than the law gives them, but I think historically, they have played a big role in developing the budget here. So I think that would be seen as a change, I think, by some of the finance committee.
Right.
And maybe not a welcome one, unless it could be explained in such a way that it's not a detrimental change. It's just a kind kind of a point of emphasis.
I'm not sure it really is that different, though, right?
No, I don't think so either.
I think that really, when I was on FinCom, Bonnie did the budget, right? I mean, she came up with it, and then we'd have discussions and so on. But she was going out and talking to all the department heads and putting it all together. And then we could object to things. We'd say, well, what about this, and what about that? We'd be asking all the questions.
We moved a lot of stuff around.
Right.
But Bonnie, for example, as the town accountant, did what you're proposing. And that is, got the department heads together, got their budgets, put the things, looked at it from a CFO standpoint, and then submitted it to us.
Right.
And
there were people, even on FinCom, who thought that it was FinCom's budget, so we were the ones. There have been times, right, when there was, FinCom presented a different budget town meeting than what the town had, right?
And it is FinCom's budget unless there's a bylaw to the contrary or a charter, and now there would be. So the budget that goes to town meeting is going to say town manager's budget. And there are some people that aren't going to like that.
It doesn't have to be the way. It can still say town manager presents the budget or puts together the budget, but then it's presented to the select board and to the finance committee.
But it's the emphasis.
It is. And
If we want to have a strong finance committee for the budget, we could put that in the charter.
Yeah, but also, the other reality is we have to look at this as like, once Fred and Steve are gone, is the finance committee going to be the same thing it is now? And so, so we also have to do this not based on current personalities, but how do you want it to work?
Yeah.
So, but also, I'm engaged with this too, but we're going to talk about this more later.
Yeah, right.
So, but good point. Go ahead.
As it pertains to the powers and duties of town manager section, I don't see anything that would disallow a very strong FinCom to be involved in that process. I think my read of this is, where does the buck stop? What is the ultimate responsibility for making sure that there is a town budget, a balanced town budget? And so you may have still a situation where a very strong FinCom could be heavily involved, but in the absence of anything else, it fundamentally is the town manager's responsibility. That's how I read this, that it doesn't prohibit what we're doing now in any way, shape, or form, but it just ensures that someone realizes that someone has to be accountable at the end of the day, no matter what. Like, if all FinCom decided just to go home one day, like, who's accountable for it?
I mean, when I first came to town, FinCom did the budgets. I mean, there was not a lot of finance staff, and they did the budgets.
Exactly. Yeah, no.
And this would seem to still very much allow for that, 100%.
So I look forward to this future discussion. I think I'm more aligned with Tim, seeing the potential for the future is perceived potentially as being a change. And the other part that I just remind us is it was Mark Rombacher who asked for items I and J, I think, to be added with regard to the select board responsibilities, with him specifically asking for delineation of what is the select board's responsibility with regard to the town meeting and with the preparation of the budget. So he's finding himself coming to us and saying, please, you've identified this role in your proposed language with regard to the town manager position. Please similarly identify what our role is with regard to select board.
Yeah, but the select board, sort of their part of the budget is they've got the town manager and the CFO kind of running the process, right? They want more input than that? I mean...
No, it's just, you're escalating everything. That's what's going on here. Yes, you had to have a strong finance committee, because as a point that Nick made, he's gone through 7 town administrators. And the way the financial policies goes, it's the TA's budget, and you need to have really a strong finance budget. But to Tim's point, it's at the end of the day, it's ultimately it's an advisory statute of a committee, and you're increasing the role of the professional people, administrators running the community with the CFO, with the town manager. So you're ratcheting that up, which would take on a lot of that responsibility and that role.
I mean, obviously the FinCom's gonna have, I mean, they're an important role, just in terms of, nothing else, ask them the questions,
You're
right?
right.
Maybe being the ones
Years
asking the
ago, there
questions.
was no staff
Yeah, right.
to assist it.
Right,
So
right,
now
they're
it's-
right. It's, that's what Jim said. It's all, this is why things are different than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, right? One of them anyways. Okay, that's all I have on the list of questions that we had. Are there other things while Jim's here? Otherwise, we let him go home and we'll spend a few minutes doing some other things we gotta get done? Going once, going twice? Anything Jim want to tell us, Jim? Or Michelle? Anything you want to say, this was on my list, I want to make sure you address that?
Anthony's raising his hand also.
Okay, Anthony and Mel both, huh? Okay.
Jim, I just wanted to clarify one thing with you that you said earlier around the procurement piece. There's I wouldn't generally recommend we put stuff around procurement other than allocating the authority in the charter, but I'm assuming you're still talking that the town is following 30B, so there's not I didn't see any special act that allowed you to do procurement differently than proper state law.
30B. No, we have an MCPPO on staff. Yep, absolutely.
Good, I just wanted to confirm that. Great.
Yes, sir.
Mel, did you have your hand up too or not? Nope. Okay. All right, anything else? Anything for us? Michelle, nothing? Okay, you know where we are, so things come up or you hear something, talk to us.
Well, while we have Michelle here,
Yeah?
are we talking about having the personnel committee come in someday?
Is
Or,
that one of the 2-to-1s?
Pardon?
Is that one of the 2-to-1 discussions that we're having?
I don't know, for what were you thinking about in particular?
I thought we were going to have representatives from various committees, possibly finance,
Oh, yeah, going forward, yeah.
and possibly personnel. I think there's been some changes in the charter for the personnel committee in relatively recent past, and I think it would be beneficial if we are intending to bring certain committees in to talk to us, maybe finance, maybe, I don't know, I thought we were.
Okay.
I would suggest that the personnel have at least Michelle and a representative to come in and give their perspective about the functioning of the personnel committee, what's working, what's not, how would you change it? My understanding right now is the personnel committee is basically a job evaluation committee, that their scope is very narrow in their whatever chartering document, versus a holistic committee that would speak about a wide range of human resource matters. And I think I heard Mel say some weeks ago that there's two areas that are of heightened importance these days in organizations and towns, and one would be finance and one would be human resources. Big issues, big liabilities in the area of human resources. So, anyway, if I was just going to suggest, while Michelle is here, if we were thinking about bringing certain committees in to chat with us, that maybe we could give Michelle a heads up.
I'm up
Consider
for that.
yourself
Yeah.
warned.
I'm up for that.
You'll be
Thank
here,
you.
I promise.
Can I follow up on one quick question? I think, Jim, at one point you had said volunteers and employees.
Yep.
In what sense?
What sense, Michelle?
So a lot of the volunteers, they still follow along our policies. For
And
example.
we follow the IT policy because we have email.
Correct, with stuff like that, for
Yeah.
instance,
Ethics.
conduct, code of conduct. So if it's an elected official, I do not interact with any issues of that nature. But any employee I do, which can include volunteers.
Yeah. I think there's an insurance component maybe as well, that they're covered in the case,
There could be, yep,
yeah.
there
of
could be, depending on the
liability.
issue.
But they're not technically called employees, so if we say employees cannot be on the select board, that would not include volunteers.
No, right.
But it would imply that
Let's
we
get an
follow-
answer, because that's a really critical.
it's a
It
Now we've
could
got
if they had
20 or
multiple
30 committees.
positions. So you have to look at, are they just one volunteer doing nothing else in the town? At that
Versus-
point, we still run a background check on them. They are not paid through the town, so technically they're not a paid employee. We still do the background check.
Did you background check on me to do this?
So we so
Never
volunteers
signed
are
that.
part of the process.
Madam Chair,
I don't see them all, so
squeaked
forgive
by.
me.
Shoot, I
Squeaked
passed.
by.
But I go double check.
No, it is a good point, because
No.
I remember when we were doing our ethics training, it was saying that we are all effectively town employees if you consider the sort of
Remember
legalese
that.
around it. But if we're saying town employees and then limitations
Maybe
around
just say paid.
board
Maybe
membership,
just say paid
then
town
you're-
employees or
yeah,
something.
someone could interpret
Okay, that's a good
anybody
point.
that sits on any
Yeah,
board being,
Right.
yeah.
So I already have to change my shirt.
And then, yeah, now you've got to add another 150, 200 people. possibly.
Right, paid employees.
That-
don't
that-
have,
For those
effective
purposes, I think
designation
we're
for
going
us.
to need Mel or Anthony to address how we carve out language, because from my standpoint, doing the Corey, background, all that type of stuff, that does not constitute an employee, and I dare say that, of, how many do we have, 20, 25 committees, et cetera? If you were to ask those individuals that are currently serving whether they believe they are an employee bound in any way, I think they would overwhelmingly say absolutely not. And therefore, I wouldn't expect them to be
It's a
precluded
legal definition, I think.
from.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
something,
All right.
common
Yeah, we can
definition.
work that
We'll get that.
So I,
Yeah.
we should,
Okay.
because I'm glad Karen brought it up, because
Yes.
it is, no.
Yeah, that was a good question. Okay. Anything else? All right, we have to finish our administrative stuff then. If you guys want to leave, you're welcome to. You're welcome to stay and listen to us if you want. Otherwise, thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming on, doing up another evening for us. Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Jim Hurt.
Yeah, looks like it, huh? Somebody beating you up, Jim?
The board?
You were kicking somebody. Yeah, huh? Okay, so, quick, let's do the minutes. Let's get that done first.
Yeah, sorry for sending them out so horribly late.
But there's just so
Sorry,
amazing. When I read them, I'm like, I forgot we talked about that. The minutes are so good, though. I just.
And I had to do it without,
They really
without any
are,
help
aren't they?
Reminds you,
from
doesn't
Lisa
it?
this
Oh,
time,
yeah.
so.
Yeah, you were there. All right, somebody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any opposed? Nope. Passed. All right, you got that done. Now, do you want to give a short thing about what you've done with the org chart and?
Yes.
Okay.
The org file.
Org
I
file.
keep calling it a chart, but
Okay.
it's a file. So
Okay.
it's an Excel worksheet attempting to capture different characteristics of the different roles. Whether they're appointed and by whom, whether they're elected, who they report to, are they an employee? If there's any bylaw or mass general law that deals with that. So I pieced it together from, you had found that super cool website, that webpage that I didn't know was there.
And I actually got that from
Authority.
Michelle, who gave it to Rob, who gave it
Yeah.
to me, right?
That page, the department list, the org chart that Jim gave us, and mashed it all together. And then, of course, when you do that, you've got duplicates and missing things and questions and names have
conflicts
changed and
and- yeah, right,
titles.
yeah.
And so last week I met with both Jim and Michelle, along with Diane Crory, and just kind of cleaned up what was there and got it in good shape. Rob had also reached out with some questions, so he and I met, tested some of my thinking. Show me what you did for this one.
Okay,
You know,
good.
just to kind of
That's good.
poke at it a little bit. So I think it's in pretty good shape, other than the fact I have volunteers under Are You an Employee? So I'll come up with a different category for that. But this can be used as we go through the work to say, who are all the elected positions? What are all the,
I'm just wondering, are you hitting the microphone? Is it close enough to you or not?
it's fine.
But the people on TV, though.
Oh, true. So who's elected, who reports to the town administrator, who, you know, you can just kind of slice it and dice it as you're having conversations.
Yep.
So it's a good starting point sort of resource. And then moving forward, we can start to track some of the changes. So maybe we switch from, you know, report to the select board, or report to the board, report to the town manager. And you can start to keep track of that. So Charlotte, you brought up, we're gonna have all this fabulous documentation when we go public with all of this, but that could be like a tiny way to track it. So I'll put it on the OneDrive somewhere.
Yep.
Magically
Definitely,
somehow.
'cause that guys will
I'll do that, and then
Keep getting updated. Oh,
Yeah,
you
then I
should
don't have to
probably,
keep
you should
sending
probably
that.
keep control of it, though. I don't want everybody just to be able to update that one. You should probably
Right,
be,
yeah.
you should be the control. So if somebody wants
All
to
right.
change
Well, I was
something,
gonna add it
they
to
need to go through
Charlotte's
you.
worksheet.
Right.
Okay, how are you gonna
But I
do
was
that?
wondering,
But-
I mean, if
we
you
can-
wanted to still do
Right?
that,
You
or
agree
if
with
you
that?
feel like it
I was just going to offer my technical
Okay,
assistance.
there we go.
I'm
Thank
sure
you.
that
There
you're
you
the
go.
only
Yes.
person that can
Thank
update
you.
it.
Thank you.
I think if we combine it as the two tabs, that would make it more tricky. Is it, you would
Okay.
originally suggest
Yeah.
maybe just adding it to
Okay.
it, but it might
All right,
make
that's
more
fine.
sense then to keep it as a separate Excel.
I'll clean it up, I'll send it to you, and you can post it, maybe? No? Or
I have
tell
a
me
better
how
way.
to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, you guys will figure it out.
Yes.
Awesome. Perfect. Okay, so I went through that a little bit, so moving on then from there to the 2-on-1 interviews or whatever, and it doesn't have to be 2-on-1, it could be 2-on-3, you know, you have, whoever you contact, if they want to have more people and have the conversation, obviously, however you want to do it, however they want to do it. But so I went through the org chart to just kind of look at some of the ones that are, for the first ones, would probably change, things that are, you know, have elected boards now and they're getting appointed by there, to talk to them first. I mean, people agree with that, going after them first. So,
Let me ask, because I'm hearing you say boards, committees, but in the minutes it reflects talking to department heads, so.
no, I mean, talking to the department heads, but the ones who are appointed by,
Okay.
Okay, that's what I'm getting
That's
at.
why I'm
Right.
asking, you're
Yes.
talking about meeting with department heads.
department heads, and if they want to have other people and their staff there as well, that, you know, however they want to do it. Because again, this is open. This is all, we're just trying to get feedback. If you don't like, what's, Joe and I ran into the grocery store the other day, right? And it's kind of surprising to me that I haven't heard from people saying, oh, you know, we're concerned about this. There hasn't been a lot. No,
I
wait,
did
you
today.
you did today, finally, okay.
That's because we need a more exciting
See,
name.
nobody knows me, so I don't.
You'd be surprised. You're going to find people come up to you, I saw you on TV, because people
I did have
people
someone
watch.
come up to me.
Yeah,
but it was
they
someone
do.
I already knew. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
I watched it.
So anyway, the ones that and again, I could have sorted and so on. I just went through the list and tried to come up, and we can start with this, and you guys can tell me if there's somebody else should be on there. But the ones that I came up with were cemetery, conservation, health. I'm going to leave library off right now because of the comments earlier, but park and rec, planning. I mean, those are really, and that's really it, because the town clerk is a different setup. The veteran agent is an SB appointment. I thought I had that on there, but I think that's wrong. Zoning is really just a coordinator, right? That's a paid employee, and police and fire and library. So if we took those other ones, so cemetery, conservation, health, park and rec, and planning.
Most of those have an MOU, but not all of, some of them are elected and some of them are not. With regard to like conservation, I find myself wondering, I see that one more as like Liz Trediak with her advisory group being Council on Aging. I'm not certain if the select board already has the authority with regard to appoint, and, you know, if our theoretical direction is for a strong TM.
Okay, so is the conservation agent, there's not an election there? I thought there was an elected person,
Not an
no?
elected
Okay,
position.
then I pulled that off wrong.
Okay.
Maybe they shouldn't be on the
That's
list
why
then.
I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, that's why I'm going through this. All right, so conservation
The
should,
assessors should be on there.
so,
Because they're elected board.
the board is elected, but the.
Department heads not.
But the department head, I think, is appointed by, still by the town, right, not by the board? That's what
The
that's what I got from your
chief
chart.
Yeah.
Right.
Chief assessor is appointed by the town manager,
Is
or town
appointed,
administrator,
right.
or whatever.
But
Right.
that's similar in many regards with regard to like, who is appointing the various, Marin, who appoints Marin?
The planning board.
Planning board does.
But is that correct? Okay,
Yes.
if
Yeah.
that's who it is. I know she's managed through the MOU by the TA.
Yep.
Well, all that can be validated in the
Right.
conversation.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just trying to
Right,
understand the
we
point
make sure we have
of,
the right ones, so we
point
want
of
to
where
go
we're
talk to.
going, right. Why are we
Is the
talking to
library
these
on that list
people?
or not?
I didn't bring them up just because the comment I got there about the trustees, and so that's a whole nother thing. So
Oh,
I don't know why that is so different. So you want to keep library on for now?
But I like the idea
I
of
mean, we're going
us
to
We're
talk
going to talk to them
about
about
having
eventually. I mean, police and fire will have to be on there eventually, probably too, but not
exploratory-
right now. What's that?
I like the idea of us casting a wide but
Okay.
not too cumbersome
Yeah.
net, as then we may find out things by asking questions that
Right.
shed some light.
So do you want to put town clerk on this list now, or do you want to put that later when we get to talk about elected officials and so on? Let's wait.
Elected officials.
Can we
Okay.
back up
Okay.
just a
Let's
bit?
wait.
Yeah.
Like what are the goals of these conversations?
Okay, so let's talk about that. So to me, it's to get input from them, okay? Do you have, this is possibly where we're gonna go. Instead of being appointed by your board, it'll be the town manager and so on. And so we want to hear, are there concerns? Is that plus or a minus to you? What are your concerns?
I'd also, not just the department head, or the head of the committee, I have no problem with two of us meeting with members of the committee,
Right.
because they're the ones that are going to be affected when they have the idea that we're not picking our head anymore, it's going to the,
Okay, so that's a good point too, yeah.
so I'd love to get their feedback and what their thoughts are.
So not just the department head, but have a separate meeting then with the committees.
The elected,
The-
any
or
elected
elect or
board.
appoint, even their appointing.
So whoever, I mean, the department and the board should be together. So whoever does conservation should talk to both and sort of.
You should talk to both, but
Yeah.
probably give them the option whether they want to do it together or separate, because
Oh,
in some
yeah, no,
cases
no,
you're
no.
going to get.
I mean separately, but not
Okay,
have like
yes.
me talk to conservation.
Right, yeah,
and
yeah,
then
then you might as
talk
well
to
do both of them,
conservation.
yeah, exactly, totally.
Yeah. get
Yeah,
the
no,
full-
that's a good point.
And maybe just taking one step back,
Mm-hmm.
like just making sure that everybody has a kind of briefing, a standard briefing to share with them who we are and what we're doing. 'cause
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't know
yes,
that
I
it's
think
given
that's
that
excellent.
everybody knows that.
Who could put that together, Charlotte?
Well, I was gonna say, we could use just that language that
Yes.
we submitted to the newsletter. We could even send that ahead of time, like, this is who we are and this is what we're doing, so they kind of at least have the 101.
I think that's excellent.
And then maybe give it,
consistent.
and then maybe the first question can be like, do you have any questions about like what this process is, what we're doing?
So could we just, what I'd like to do is get 2 or 3 questions, we're going to start with these questions, and everybody asks the same questions.
Right.
And then you can reflow it based on what's there.
We discuss what those questions would,
That's what I want to do right now.
So we could start with the blurb, so that
The blurb.
everybody has the standard kind of, this is who
Thank
we
you
are
again,
and this is
Jim.
what we're doing. And that's kind of talking points on just us.
Yep.
And help maybe answer some questions if they have questions about what
Yep.
we're doing. Okay.
Can I do another step back question? What's the criteria for us inviting a department head in? Is it the presence of an MOU today? Why would we not invite the head of IT or the head of finance? So what's the universe of department heads? What's the criteria for when somebody says, why didn't you invite me to come in and talk to you?
Because this is a change. Those people already report to the town administrator, and these people do not have a direct line responsibility to the town
All right, so the
administrator.
universe of people we would invite in are those where an MOU exists, is that right?
Or something is changing, and there may or may not be an MOU. Most cases there is.
But
I don't know what's changing yet.
Right.
Kevin's asking who's going to come and sit here in this meeting as opposed to us going out and just having a conversation.
And by what criteria?
Right.
Is that what you're asking? Who comes in?
criteria.
Okay.
Because when somebody says, why am I not invited to come in? The answer is.
We can't talk to everybody.
We're coming to
So-
you.
so
Are your
Well,
bosses
that,
changing?
but no, wait a minute,
I
but
don't
even
know
though
what's
we're coming to
changing.
you, is if
I don't know
Well,
what's
I guess-
changing yet.
I guess we're making the assumption that we're leaning towards a strong town manager. And so perhaps the criteria, and correct me if I'm wrong, the criteria is your reporting structure going to change? Is the way that you are assigned your position going to change? If yes, then we want to talk to you. Is that accurate?
I think that's certainly my understanding of the first pass
Right.
on this, that's the first wave of people we would talk to. That's also my understanding.
But also this going out to talk to people though.
Hear from those other people too, like the IT department, for example. I look at their budget at the town meeting, and I have questions about it, but I don't know who to ask. I'm not going to ask the IT guy, hey, how come your budget is X? Can you please lay out what you're spending
is-
this on?
I apologize for interrupting.
Oh, go ahead.
But is that, I'm concerned about that sort of approach from the standpoint, then we're theoretically getting into a great level of minutia potentially. And I think I'm more understanding our charge to not be at that level of review, but rather we've heard, I thought pretty unanimous MOUs from the select board members who were here, get into that, resolve those. So to me, MOUs, if one exists, you're definitely in the first tier
Yeah,
with
I think
regard
that's
to
the
discussion.
criteria. I'm okay with that.
Having said that, even some of those MOUs, wouldn't make my first tier like the library. There's a library MOU, but with regard to the trustees, which as I understand it, is a separately existing group per law, then the directing, we'll have to, I'd encourage us to have discussion amongst ourselves with regard to when we talk strong TM, what does that exactly mean? Because as it pertains to library, a strong TM, from my perspective with regard to the law, is not going to be directing the library director. That's going to continue to be by law the elected trustees. And therefore, if there's not effective change other than a supervisory administrative sort of role, but not sort of direction, element, where's our role to really
But
need to
then the
take
other
their
side of that,
time?
Rob, is but then we need to confirm that. Like, we think we know that there, so somewhere we get
So-
that confirmed, right?
Okay.
So whether it's start on one-on-one, if they want to do it, if not, they just come in here and they can explain to us, this is how the law works.
So
this is
I'm
where we
open,
are.
I'm open to that,
Yeah.
but that might not, some of our background and what we're charged to do could get us into the appearance of change when in fact, no, we already understand.
We're just exploring, we're just learning. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay, I think some may have
Oh, I'm sure they do.
perceived notions
Oh, I'm
that
sure they
they're-
do. What can you do,
I'm just trying to elaborate
Yeah.
with regard to Kevin, where's that population
Okay.
of where we would be? And, to Kyle, to some extent, I'm not certain that we're getting into, various departments that I'm not certain are in our pure purview.
I think partly it's a timing thing as well. I mean, if someone asked me, why haven't we covered XYZ, I would say we actually have a limited amount of bandwidth as well, so we are trying to prioritize places where we're going to get the most amount of information for the time that we have. Like, there's going to be a sort of diminishing returns, I imagine, as it pertains to a charter. Like, I'm sure I could spend my lifetime trying to understand local government and learn something new every day, every minute of every day. But the way I would see it, we want to prioritize where we're going to get the biggest chunk of information to inform our charter discussions, and I kind of go for the big five here. I don't know.
Are you comfortable with this? You brought the question up. Are you comfortable with what we've said?
I think there could be great sensitivity here in terms of who we invite and who we don't invite into this forum. And I just want to have a good answer for who we invite and who we don't invite.
I would say anyone who says, how come you didn't invite me? Say, you're welcome to come. It's an open meeting, just let us know. That's not what you want?
So I've got to come in, you invited other people in, you gave them questions in advance, but not, I can come in and at some meeting, I think there should be a rationale for who we are inviting in and not inviting in. And I don't know, it could be, because there's a possibility, I just think there should.
Well, I think there is, though, right now. I think we're saying people whose reporting relationship is going to change.
Okay, good.
Is being proposed to change.
Good, so
Okay.
if that's it.
And people agree? I mean, that's my standpoint.
That's all I was asking.
So I'm in agreement, but I'd like to add to your, 5, or if that's the number, is we've heard over the course of this meeting and the last one, so what are we going to do about fire and police?
Okay, well, but let's just start. I mean, we've got, between that.
Okay. But
I
Kevin's.
think we should probably talk to them. I think we should have them come in and say,
And-
who do you think you should report to?
And I'm fine with your response saying at the start. I'm just trying to say it feels like an elephant in the room that we haven't discussed as yet, deliberated with regard to the 2 meetings that we've now heard. And as we go on to, we're saying the big 5, but I'd actually say there's 2 much bigger ones than, quote, the big 5.
Yeah.
Should we note it as there's, just from a logistical standpoint, there's a phase 1
Yeah.
where we have cemetery,
However.
conservation, health, parks and rec and planning. And then we have phase 2, which is library, police and fire. And just for the sake of organizing, we just say we'll knock those out and then come
I
back.
think that would make sense
Put
because
something to paper.
Yeah, just for the sake of saying, we know what we're doing.
Yeah, we didn't forget them. It's like, oh, yeah, the police department, we forgot about them.
And if we say that is on the docket, it's
Yeah.
just we haven't timed it yet.
Right.
maybe.
that we've started out with the elected committees. That's what we decided to look at first, and then this, and then move on, because this is an
Elected
ongoing thing,
heads.
too.
And
So
can
can you
we-
repeat your group again?
It's elected, you said, elected committees,
Yes.
or, but appointed heads.
Right, yes.
Yeah, the heads are appointed by the,
Elected committees, appointed heads.
I believe
That's
so.
our
So the
first,
ones
like,
that
category.
and you can confirm, you all can confirm whether these, so cemetery, I said health also, was that on?
Yeah, yeah, we have the
Health, park and rec, planning, what was the other one, library?
library.
We left them in there?
You had cemetery, conservation, health,
I think we
parks
took
and rec, and
conservation
planning.
off, because we said there's not,
Okay. So
Right, it's
cemetery,
not.
health, parks and rec.
No
and planning.
election.
we
No
can double
elected.
check, yeah. Cemetery, health, library, park and rec, planning.
Will this also be prefaced with some heads-up note to like all
What-
the commissions, department heads? Said the charter committee is going to meet, da-da-da-da-da. Just so that we're not all showing up like, hey.
Oh, yeah, well, that's what, I think Charlotte's
Okay.
gonna put the blurb together, so an email will go out, say, this is what we're doing, this is who we are, this is why we're doing this, we'd like to talk to you, and then
Okay.
go from there. And that'll be a consistent one, so they all,
Yes.
Get the
everyone gets
same.
message at the same time.
then they can be talking about, did you get that email? Did you get that?
Right, right.
So
Okay,
just
so
to
the
clarify-
questions now, we
And
have,
you would send out that blurb, and then it would be whoever we've tagged to follow up would be, like, if I'm following up with cemetery, I would schedule with them, and that's then on each individual
Right.
little tag.
and so
team.
we'll do both the appointee and the appointer, right, on those? Okay, so now do we want it, so questions, let's talk about the questions. So you're gonna start off with the blurb, and then, what do we want to say? 2 or 3 questions, just 2 or 3 leading questions, and then free form after that is what I would recommend. So we have some consistency.
So we could say, it's currently our understanding that your position or your committee appoints or hires the department head, or you are the one appointed, you know. We can confirm the data that we have.
Right, that's true, yeah, you're gonna do that first.
And then from there, we could say, as part of our charge, we're considering what a strong town manager might mean, which that would be in the definition. How do you see that impacting your responsibilities? Could be one question. Confirm, and then how would the change impact it?
I like the idea also of maybe asking something along the lines of, do you have any concerns, or, you know, what would you see as the pros and cons of this approach? Something that's open but directed, to give them sort of an opportunity to, like, reflect or, I don't know, muse a little, as a way of perhaps casting a net on the things that we may not otherwise.
That's the number 3 that then opens it up, and then
so
they
we
can go and talk about
confirm
what
the
they,
data, and then, you know,
whatever it is that's on their mind, given this.
whatever.
So as your good questions, good 1, 2, et cetera, but how much notice are we going to give? Because shouldn't those people that might be interviewed be coming with the consensus of their board committee or commission prior to just coming in and
They
shooting?
set up their time, and it's not coming in, this is the 2-on-1s now we're talking about.
Okay,
The 2-on-2s.
but in this discussion
Yeah.
here in the last 10 minutes,
Yeah.
we've expanded it from talking to a department head
Yeah.
to now talking to,
Committees, right?
okay, except that as you make that transition, talking to 1 or 2, as opposed to some of these commissions, boards, committees, have 5, 7, and are we really, is it going to be just the chair who might seemingly be empowered, but is that person really empowered
Grief.
to, well, I'm just trying to say, if I were in one of those groups, or when we're talking to one of those groups, what does
I think we
we're a
have to
group of
assume-
9?
Well, then maybe you just, you send it to the chair and you say, how do you want to do this? I mean, we can do one, we can meet with you, or if you want to invite us to your next meeting, however you want to do it.
I apologize for the
No, that's a
question,
good
but
question.
I fear that
But,
one
yeah.
person.
I think we have to start with the chair.
Somebody's not gonna be happy.
Say, hey, we want to talk to your department head. These are the questions we're going to ask. we're gonna set it up in 2 weeks or something like that,
Well,
and see how the
Or
chair
do you
responds.
want to send it to the department
Some of them
head
meet
and
once a
then
month.
also to the chair of the committee? Because you're essentially
Okay, for
extending
both.
2 invitations.
I would send the same notice to both people
Yeah.
at the same time, on the same email, or however you're going to.
Yeah, but have
That way it
separate
doesn't
meetings.
look like you're undercutting.
Right,
the
no,
chair.
that's a good point. But then say, but, we're happy to schedule together or separate meetings,
Sure.
perhaps. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, we want your
Planning meets, planning, park and rec, I can go back through the list. They meet once a month.
Yeah.
So when is this going out, and is it gonna be in time for their July?
Rob, what else, what would you suggest?
I guess I feel a bit on the spot because I'm trying to bring up reality-based concerns, trying to get cooperation from these boards and committees, and I don't want to have them feel like they're placed on the spot. And when we hear from them, I want to hear something that make them feel comfortable as they come to us with regard to credibility
So what
of
would
the
you
process.
suggest we do differently other than
I
this?
think our timeline is challenged. I
But I don't
think
think
we
we have a
went
deadline
in.
for this, do we?
Yeah,
We don't have a deadline for having the interviews conducted.
No, but
And is the
Pri-
assumption that we're going to their once-a-month meeting to talk to them? Because I thought this was going to be kind of on the side.
Yeah.
and what I thought I heard was department head. And in the last 15 minutes, it's sprung forward with regard to committees. And so that's where I'm sorry,
But so if we send them an email and they say, let's say the department says, cool, I'm ready next week, great, we can move forward. But let's say the chair says, actually, I'd really like to deliberate with the committee first. So given our meeting schedule, we can't schedule this until mid-September. Okay, we're going to have to maybe deal with that. I don't know that we have set, I don't think in the notes we've set
I'm
ourselves
not trying to
a
make the
timeline.
decision, I'm trying to put the question,
I think we have
reflect
to
it back to you.
anticipate that some of these might take some time, I guess, is what you're saying, Rob, right? It might take some time,
We
possibly.
must assume that they might meet once a month, but they communicate
Yeah.
back and forth on every committee I've ever been on.
Yeah.
So it's not like if you send them a letter tomorrow, they won't find out for a month.
Right, right.
Or we could position it
They
as
send it,
perhaps
see
the
what- see
summer
what you get.
is
See what we
slower
get
without
back,
meetings. and then
acknowledging
you
it.
might have
We
more
can't
time.
account
We're not
for
going to
every
know until we
scenario.
do it, right?
It might take some time, yeah.
But I also think we should put some urgency behind it too. I mean, we want to drag this out for 6 months. We want to,
Yeah, but
Yeah, I agree. Put
But
a
we've
time
also
box
had
on
very
it.
good
As soon as
response when we've asked
possible.
people to come in, and people are very interested in this, so I think that that'll be in our favor, I think. Because, I mean, they don't have to come talk to us, and then we'll just make our decisions without their input. I mean,
And I think that's important to say too. It's like,
I mean,
you don't have
basically.
to respond to this.
No, you don't have
talk
to,
to
right?
us.
No.
We just
But we
thought you
will,
might
Roger.
want
We're
to.
looking for your input. If you want to,
Yeah,
tell
we'll
us some
just make
stuff.
a decision for you, that's all.
We've tried
So
it.
can I review the bidding? Are we talking about inviting member or members of these boards as well as the department head that reports to them to speak to both entities?
Yes.
Yes,
Together or separately?
up to them.
They prefer.
Up to them.
Right, I think we just, I had it in the notes earlier,
So
just up to them.
we're going to send an invitation out to these boards, or these, whatever they're, boards, and the head of the corresponding department, invite them to meet with a subset of this group to talk about future constructs.
Yep. Yep.
One meeting, both of them invited to the same meeting.
Well, if they choose, they want to do it separately, they can do it separately.
we can
I think
say,
that was
if you
Kyle's point,
prefer,
that
we can
we
meet
would
together. I'd rather have 2
email them.
meetings.
I would, yeah, I agree with
You really
Karen.
have what?
I'd rather have 2 meetings, but if they prefer, we can do it.
Yeah, I
As
think
well.
you'd get much more candid
Yeah,
feedback
that's what I was
from 2
thinking.
meetings. But if I'm appointed by an elected board, it's almost like asking me to meet with you and not bring my boss and not tell my boss.
Yeah, so the
I would
invitation,
anticipate some people would be uncomfortable with that.
Yep.
and I think we can, like you said,
Together.
mitigate that if
It's
the
normal, really like it.
invitation goes,
I don't see a
Together.
problem with meeting at the same time at all.
Yeah.
and they
You
can
don't think
always
the
choose.
director would ever say,
No, I
oh,
don't think
I
it's a
would be
problem.
much better if I don't report to this board, it's really awful when I have to answer to them, and I've got the town manager, everybody else in town does it this way, and their board's telling me to do it that way.
Yeah,
You don't
I
think
would,
that's-
I would meet with one time. bring the board, bring the manager in. It's just not scary stuff. I mean, just, I don't think that we
it's
have
not
any
a
department
deposition.
heads out there
That's not-
that we're just
I
gonna
know.
rat out their board,
Yeah.
or I'm afraid to say anything because the board hires me, so.
I don't know.
Okay.
But, however you wanna do it.
Right.
We can leave it up to them. Okay.
It's not my decision, it's our decision, so you guys decide. I mean, I put it out there, just leave it vague enough that they can
Interpret it as
do one
they
way or the
will.
other. And the other side is, once you reach out, now people have your name and number. If they want to tell you something, they don't want to do it in front of somebody else, they'll find you.
And I also see this as it is part of our outreach efforts as
Right.
well, like, which is why I think the piece about us informing them and also being ready to answer questions about, you know, and just being kind of prepared to say, this is where you can see the minutes and this is what we, you know, so that it's a little bit of a education opportunity as well, so that people kind of know what we're doing.
The nice thing is, you really don't have to watch them, go through these whole meetings. You really can read those minutes and know what happens. It's amazing to me. Okay, so do we want here and now to sign up who wants to do what, or do you want to do that in email after the work back? You
You would
guys,
sign it.
just do it now?
You would sign it.
I'm not assigning.
Just draw names.
No, because somebody said you wanted, the ones you want to do aren't even on
I
here
wanted
yet.
to do finance and assessors.
Right, and they're not
But
on here yet.
assessors, Neither one of those are on
In there yet, okay. So, cemetery, who wants to do cemetery?
I can do cemetery.
Okay.
Yeah.
When do we anticipate we'll meet with these people? I
It's-
ask because I have a full-time job.
I know. Well, exactly. So, I mean,
I don't want to I'm asking the group, like, when are you meeting with these people? Is it just like during the day? Is it on
I'm
the
not certain
weekends?
that I'm
But
meeting
you,
with.
you had mentioned you would
When
talk
one,
to some
when one
folks.
typically meets
Oh,
with people.
Yes, so I meet with people during the day primarily, and I attend many, many meetings, and I speak with them often before the meeting and after the meeting, in one or the other, for minutes, not, 15 minutes. But yeah, I do make appointments and meet with people throughout the day. But I'm retired. You're completely correct in saying what you said, 100%.
I will say, generally, if we were to
Cemetery, too.
join a scheduled meeting, my impression is that they aren't after typical work hours, like evening times.
Okay.
At least
And I
like
think we
this,
could also do virtual too.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be in
Virtual
person.
evening tends to work, yeah.
You do a half hour during the day, maybe.
so would some of these more likely to be available at night? Park and Rec or planning?
The cemetery.
Huh?
Plain joke.
People are dying to get in. I know.
Betsy, I'll sign up for anything at all, and I will offer myself as the person probably knows least, because in a sense I think it could be helpful to pair up someone who knows maybe quite a bit about that committee and someone who doesn't.
Right.
To kind of, as we were saying, like have those two different ears hearing things. But that's just to say I have no preference, but I'm happy to pair up with anybody who wants, if there's like a gap.
I'll do anything.
Okay, okay, Charlotte, for one, I'm going to put you,
I'll volunteer for cemetery only because I volunteered to clean up the cemetery earlier this year, and it's clear that they need help with the grounds. So
I got both to put you guys on there. Do you want to do
Invasive
3 or do you want to just do 2? Because I already got Tim and Joe. You guys really want to do cemetery? Can I get you to do something else?
Sure.
Can I put you on something else rather than
there are
cemetery?
more passionate people about
No,
that.
I'd rather do
Something
cemetery, but if you
Okay.
can take me off.
Why do you guys both want, that's interesting that you guys both wanted to do that. All right, we'll figure this one out. All right, let's see what else we got.
Just trying to get the ball rolling.
Huh?
Just trying to get the ball rolling.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
good.
that's what I'm like, I'll do anything. Just
All
put
right,
my
I'm going
name
to take
down.
you off then. So it's going to be Joe and Kyle are going to do cemetery, and I'm going to
Oh,
put,
okay.
I'm going to put Tim someplace else. We're going to put Tim with Charlotte to talk to, how about planning? Is that good?
Sure.
All
Yep.
right.
Yep.
So I should write this down.
Okay. I have a bias. I think planning's going to be relatively easy. I think Board of Health may be difficult. I think Park and Rec may be difficult.
It's gonna be difficult.
Yeah, so much like the fire and the police chief, any strong TM related to Park and Rec and planning and Board of Health, they might be difficult conversations, almost where I might say, Charlotte, your statement that you don't know, so you're kind of, you have a phenomenal way of asking questions, very opposite of me, who asks them very pointed and very direct. And
Kind of innocently asks the questions.
she does. She
Yeah.
does a terrific job.
British
And so the more difficult,
can get away
the
with
more
a little
difficult the task,
Yeah.
you've got
I agree.
the ability to ask and be very effective with obtaining answers as well.
Well, I'm happy to offer my public health background if it'll also help on the health department. But,
How many, I could argue that some of these meetings should be held in this forum, televised for this entire committee to hear. Perhaps they're that important versus one-off meetings.
The intention is we'll have both. We're going to have the one
So,
on, so,
I guess I'd like to know, what is the inventory of meetings that we're talking about? Would it be good to know, are we going to talk to finance?
Yes.
Are we going to talk to personnel? All right, what's the universe and what's the best forum and approach for the entire universe of people we're inviting in?
what do you suggest?
We talk about what the universe of people is that we're inviting in.
Okay,
Start there.
okay, you start.
Start with what?
But if we're going to do that, see, I find that your question's fine, but it's 8:30. We've previously ended all conversations prior to that. So to be starting this conversation, I find myself, we haven't spent much time deliberating amongst ourselves with regard to, Kevin, your question. I think it's a very, very good question. So I would answer it with regard to A to Z. Here are all use the org chart, here they all are. Yes, no. What are the reasons for them? We've already previously said 20 minutes ago.
Whole committee?
MOUs.
Subset of committee.
Okay, that to me is a different, and that's where I think we should have deliberations with regard to that question as well.
Yep.
But that merits more than just me responding to your question. There's
Agreed.
9 people,
Agreed.
and I don't know what others think.
It's
What do you say?
I'm in agreement with Kevin
Okay,
that I would prefer having the group show up before all of us rather than the 2-on-1. That's my preference. Because I think we get more out of it. And I think all the questions that get asked of importance gets asked to each and every committee that comes in, rather than what I think is important or what you think is important on a 2-on-1.
the purpose of the 2-on-1s was just to give people a chance, because some people are very uncomfortable on camera, and they
No,
know they're on
I
camera, and so
understand,
they
but-
don't talk, and so.
but-
could we have if we just
They can get
throwing
used
it out
to
there,
it. No,
but
no,
what
no,
if, what if
I'm
you
glad you
potentially
said it. I
flipped
just wanna-
it and said that we would have a half-hour slot for each of these department head committee
Okay.
groupings to come in, and the follow-up happens 2-on-1. So we note maybe if we don't have time to complete
Or maybe
a
people say it
question,
afterwards, they say, I don't have anything else, we don't have anything to talk about, right?
in order to maybe expand upon a line of questioning,
Okay.
but to still give the
Okay.
opportunity for the full
right.
committee to hear the full.
But I think we've got to be really
Could we
crisp
do
on
this at our
what we
next
ask.
meeting? Take the list of all the committees. Go down and pick out, I mean, some committees we don't need to meet with, but at that time, it's not 8:30, and we can all say, these are the ones that we have to do, and whether we bring them in or do it another way, but at least we'll have time to go through the whole list and determine which committees
Okay.
we feel are important that we meet with,
Okay.
or they come here.
I would love to know
Agree.
what the universe is that we're inviting in, and if it's 5, we could do this, and if it's 20, we probably can't do that. We probably need to do something else. So I would love to know, before we make determinations, what is the universe of entities that we're inviting in, either to this full body or a subset of this body, and then we can make a decision about how to best interact with those entities in a reasonable time frame. Perhaps we invite them all in to this session. The first half hour is dedicated to that purpose for the next 12 weeks, 12 meetings. and we bring them in the first half hour of this meeting, is for board members and the department head of those entities to come in. They're big people. They should be willing to talk in front of, if you got something to say it.
And we should do that at the very next meeting.
We may have to do
Do
more
what at the next
meetings.
meeting? Not bring
Second
it
that.
No,
No.
make the list.
Make the list, make the list.
For a minute, I thought you were saying,
Right.
bring them all in next
No, make the list, and then we can move on to the adjournment question.
All right, is everybody good with this?
It's 25 minutes of 9. I want
Okay,
to go
so,
home.
okay.
Do you want me to work with you?
Second that motion.
Betsy, and come up with a proposal for the
Thank you.
committee?
That would be awesome.
We can try to figure out
So
how
we're not
to
starting with a blank sheet of paper, because that will
organize
take
it
forever. Yeah.
and
That'd
what
be great.
sequence.
That'd be wonderful.
Okay, awesome. All right, Alan,
Move to adjourn.
Yay.
Second.
those in favor?
All right.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.